Skyrim is full of places with clear histories, ancient ruins, cities, caves. You usually learn who built them, what happened there, and why they matter. But some locations feel different. Some places in Skyrim seem to resist explanation entirely. They leave behind strange details, unanswered questions, and bits of lore that never fully connect no matter how closely you look at them. You explore them, read every journal, search every corner, and still walk away feeling like there's something missing. That's what makes these places so memorable, not just because they're hidden or unsettling, but because Skyrim never gives you a complete answer about them. Instead, the game leaves you with theories, implications, and the feeling that something bigger might be hiding beneath the surface. And honestly, those are often the locations players remember the longest. The Temple of Miraak is one of the most mysterious places in Skyrim, because from the moment you first see it, the location feels like it exists outside the normal logic of the world around it. Most ruins in Skyrim eventually reveal what they are. You learn who built them, why they collapsed, what happened inside them, and how they fit into the larger history of Tamriel. Even the strangest Nordic ruins usually become understandable once you dig through enough journals, Draga crypts, or quest dialogue. The Temple of Miraak never fully does. Even after completing the entire Dragonborn DLC, there's still a lingering feeling that you never truly understood what the place was or what it became over time. That mystery starts before you even enter the temple itself. The surrounding region of Solstheim already feels detached from Skyrim, covered in ash, ancient ruins, and strange influences tied directly to Hermaeus Mora. But the temple stands apart even within that environment, massive, ancient, and partially buried beneath the surface. It dominates the landscape in a way that immediately raises questions. Unlike many Nordic ruins that simply feel abandoned, the Temple of Miraak feels active somehow, not alive exactly, but waiting. And the people surrounding it only deepen that feeling. The first time players encounter the temple, the Skarl villagers and other inhabitants of Solstheim are being mysteriously controlled while constructing strange shrines around the Allmaker stones. They move in repetitive trances, endlessly working without understanding why, drawn towards Miraak's influence as though their minds no longer belong to them. That alone makes the temple feel unnatural before you even step inside, because Miraak's power reaches outward from the temple into the minds of people across the island itself. And nobody fully understands how. That lack of explanation defines the entire location. The deeper you go into the temple, the more the atmosphere shifts away from the ordinary Skyrim dungeon design and into something far stranger. The architecture still resembles Nordic ruins on the surface, stone corridors, ancient carvings, Draga crypts, but there's another layer beneath it constantly pushing through. Tentacles, eyes, black organic growths tied to Hermaeus Mora. The temple feels corrupted in a way unlike almost any other ruin in Skyrim. Not destroyed, but transformed. And that transformation creates one of the biggest mysteries surrounding the location. Where exactly does Miraak end and Hermaeus Mora begin? Because the temple doesn't feel fully Nordic anymore. It feels like something ancient was slowly rewritten by an entirely different force over time. You can still see traces of what the structure originally was, but they're buried beneath layers of influence connected to Apocrypha and forbidden knowledge. That blending of identities makes the temple feel unstable, like it no longer fully belongs to Skyrim at all. And Miraak himself only intensifies that feeling. As the first Dragonborn, Miraak already occupies a strange place in Elder Scrolls lore. He predates nearly everything players associate with dragons and the Dragonborn prophecy, existing as a figure half hidden between myth and history. The temple reflects that same ambiguity perfectly. It's ancient but not fully understood, powerful but strangely incomplete. Even the draga inside the temple feel different from those in ordinary Nordic tombs. Most draga crypts in Skyrim are tied to ancient kings, dragon priests, or burial traditions. The draga within Mirak's temple feel more like servants preserving something unfinished. Their presence doesn't just suggest death, it suggests continued devotion long after normal history should have erased it. And then there are the Black Books. Few things in Skyrim create mystery as effectively as the Black Books connected to Hermaeus Mora. Their existence immediately disrupts the normal boundaries of reality within the game. Reading one doesn't simply reveal information, it physically pulls the player into Apocrypha, a realm that operates entirely outside of normal understanding. The Temple of Mirak becomes one of the central gateways to that experience, and once Apocrypha enters the picture, the mystery surrounding the temple expands dramatically. Because suddenly the location stops feeling like a ruin and starts feeling like a bridge between worlds. That's what makes the temple so unsettling compared to other mysterious places in Skyrim. Most mysteries in the game remain grounded in history or archaeology. The Temple of Mirak moves beyond that into metaphysical territory. It raises questions that don't have concrete answers, because they involve forces far beyond mortal understanding. How much of Mirak's power actually came from being Dragonborn? How much came from Hermaeus Mora? Did Mirak willingly transform the temple over time, or did the corruption happen naturally through Mora's influence? And perhaps most importantly, how long had the temple been waiting for the player before they ever arrived? That last question becomes increasingly disturbing throughout the DLC. The temple constantly feels prepared for your arrival somehow. Mirak knows about you long before you fully understand him. The cultists know your name. The Black Books react to your presence. It creates the impression that events surrounding the temple were unfolding quietly long before the player became aware of them. Like the entire place existed in a dormant state, waiting for another Dragonborn to appear. And that sense of inevitability gives the temple an almost prophetic atmosphere. Everything inside it feels predetermined. Even the structure itself contributes to this mystery constantly. Unlike straightforward ruins with clear layouts and purpose, the Temple of Mirak feels layered in confusing ways. Ancient chambers blend into impossible spaces connected to Apocrypha. Hidden passages reveal buried sections beneath the visible ruins. The further you descend, the less stable the architecture starts to feel conceptually. It's as though the temple physically reflects the corruption of knowledge itself, a place where reality slowly loses coherence the deeper you go. That effect becomes strongest whenever Hermaeus Mora's influence visibly overtakes the environment. The tentacles, black waters, and shifting textures associated with this place don't behave like natural corruption. They feel invasive in a cosmic sense, as though another realm is bleeding directly into the physical world. And the terrifying part is that nobody inside the temple fully controls it anymore. Not the Draga, not the cultists, possibly not even Mirak himself. That uncertainty surrounding control is another reason the temple feels so mysterious. Mirak presents himself as powerful and independent, but throughout the DLC, there are constant hints that he may simply be another prisoner of Hermaeus Mora in the end. The temple reflects that ambiguity perfectly. Is it Mirak's domain or Mora's? The answer never fully becomes clear, and Skyrim intentionally leaves that uncertainty unresolved. Even after defeating Mirak, the temple doesn't suddenly become understandable. If anything, it becomes stranger in retrospect. You leave with more questions than answers about what exactly happened there across thousands of years. The location never fully explains its transformation from Nordic temple to cosmic nightmare. It simply presents the evidence and leaves players to interpret it themselves. That ambiguity is what gives the temple its lasting impact, because mystery in Skyrim works best when the game refuses to over-explain itself, and the Temple of Mirak thrives on incomplete understanding. You can explore every chamber, read every black book, and finish every quest tied to it. Yet the place still feels unknowable by the end. Compared to other mysterious locations in Skyrim, which usually hide secrets beneath physical ruins or lost histories, the Temple of Miraak feels mysterious because it challenges the limits of what players can even comprehend within the world. It isn't just ancient, it's altered by something beyond ordinary reality. And that makes every part of it feel uncertain. The architecture, the lore, the magic. Even the timeline itself surrounding Miraak and Hermaeus Mora. Nothing inside the temple ever feels fully grounded. And that's exactly why it remains one of the most fascinating locations in Skyrim, years after release. Because no matter how many times players revisit it, there's always the lingering sense that something about the temple still hasn't been fully uncovered. Something buried beneath the ruins, the black books, and the whispers of Apocrypha. Waiting quietly beneath Solstheim, long before the player arrived and possibly long after they leave. White Ridge Barrow is one of the most mysterious places in Skyrim and Solstheim because it constantly feels like multiple layers of history have collapsed into each other in ways the game never fully explains. At first glance, it appears to be another Nordic ruin buried beneath the ash and snow of the island. The kind of ancient tomb players have explored countless times across Skyrim. But the deeper you move into White Ridge Barrow, the stranger the location becomes. Dragger crypts give way to hidden laboratories, Nordal burial halls connect to bizarre magical experiments, and eventually the entire ruin begins feeling less like a tomb and more like something unstable. Like several completely different stories were forced together underground over centuries. And that instability is exactly what makes the place so mysterious, because unlike many other ruins in Skyrim that eventually reveal a clear purpose, White Ridge Barrow never fully settles into one identity. It's a Nordic crypt, a necromantic hideout, an ash spawn breeding ground, a hidden black book location tied to Hermaeus Mora, and somehow all of those things exist together beneath the same structure. That layering immediately creates questions the game never fully answers. The ruin itself predates almost everything currently happening there. Originally, White Ridge Barrow was simply another Nordic burial site, part of Solstheim's ancient connection to Skyrim's dragon cults and early Nordic civilization. You see the familiar architecture immediately: stone corridors, burial chambers, dragger resting in alcoves, traps built to protect ancient dead. But then strange details start appearing. The ash, the unnatural heat buried beneath the cold environment, the experiments hidden deeper within the ruin, and suddenly the place stops feeling historically stable. That shift becomes especially noticeable once you discover the hidden laboratory of Dukin's former servant and necromancer. Her presence completely changes the tone of the barrow because it introduces an entirely different layer of mystery on top of the Nordic ruins already beneath it. She wasn't simply hiding in White Ridge Barrow, she was actively experimenting there, using the ruin and the volcanic energy beneath Solstheim to create ash spawn. And the ash spawn themselves are one of the most mysterious enemy types in the entire Dragonborn DLC. They don't feel natural, not fully alive, not fully undead. Creatures made from ash, fire, and corrupted magical force, animated through experiments the player never fully understands. White Ridge Barrow becomes the central location where these horrifying creatures begin to make sense, but only partially. Even after reading journals and exploring the laboratory, there's still an incomplete quality to the explanation surrounding them. You understand what Ildari was doing, but not necessarily the full extent of how or why it worked. That incomplete understanding is what makes the location feel so dangerous, because White Ridge Barrow constantly suggests there are forces operating beneath Solstheim that nobody fully comprehends anymore. Not the player, not the necromancers, possibly not even Hermaeus Mora himself. And that uncertainty hangs over the entire ruin. The environmental design reinforces this perfectly. Unlike many Nordic crypts, which maintain a constant atmosphere throughout, White Ridge Barrow constantly changes tone as you descend. The upper sections feel familiar and relatively predictable: dragger, traps, burial halls. But deeper inside, the architecture starts blending with volcanic heat and strange magical corruption. The air itself feels heavy. Fire erupts from vents beneath the stone floors. Ash coats sections of the ruin that should feel cold and dead. It's as though Solseam itself is bleeding upward into the crypt. And that environmental instability creates a sense that the ruin was never meant to contain everything now buried inside it. The danger surrounding the location only intensifies because of how unpredictable the threats become. Most Skyrim dungeons operate within understandable rules. Falmer caves contain Falmer. Vampire lairs contain vampires. Dragger crypts contain only Dragger, for the most part. White Ridge Barrow contains everything. Dragger attack alongside ash spawn. Fire traps erupt unexpectedly from volcanic vents. Necromantic experiments linger in hidden chambers beneath ancient Nordic architecture. The location constantly shifts between different forms of danger, making it feel unstable both mechanically and narratively. And then there's the Black Book. The moment the player discovers the hidden twilight hidden within White Ridge Barrow, the ruin transforms completely from dangerous to deeply mysterious. Because suddenly, the location becomes directly tied to Hermaeus Mora and Apocrypha, connecting it to cosmic forces far beyond ordinary Nordic history or necromancy. That changes everything retroactively. The experiments, the ash spawn, the corruption within the ruin. All of it suddenly feels connected to something larger and far more unknowable. And the terrifying part is that the game never fully clarifies how deep that connection actually goes. Was Ildari influenced directly by Hermaeus Mora? Did the Black Book corrupt the ruin over time? Or was White Ridge Barrow already unstable before Mora's influence ever arrived? The game leaves those questions deliberately unresolved. That ambiguity is what gives the ruin its lasting impact. White Ridge Barrow constantly feels like a location where too many dangerous things converged in the same place over centuries. Nordic burial traditions, volcanic energy, necromantic experimentation, Daedric knowledge, all layered together underground until the ruin itself started feeling corrupted by accumulation alone. Compared to other mysterious places in Skyrim, White Ridge Barrow stands out because the danger feels intellectual as much as physical. You aren't just fighting enemies, you're uncovering evidence of people pushing into forces they didn't fully understand. Every hidden chamber and laboratory reinforces the idea that curiosity and ambition slowly transformed the ruin into something much worse than its creators ever intended. Ildari herself embodies this perfectly. She's one of Skyrim's clearest examples of magical obsession escalating into complete moral collapse. Her experiments with ash spawn feel grotesque because they blur the line between creation and corruption. She wasn't simply studying ash creatures, she was manufacturing them, creating life from destruction itself. And White Ridge Barrow becomes the environment where that obsession spiraled completely out of control. Even visually, White Ridge Barrow feels corrupted compared to ordinary Nordic ruins. The volcanic glow beneath sections of the crypt creates an oppressive heat that clashes unnaturally with the cold northern atmosphere of the island. Fire and ash replace the usual icy silence associated with Nordic tombs. The environment feels active in a way ancient ruins normally don't. Like something beneath the surface is shifting, still burning, still unfinished. That unfinished feeling is another huge part of the mystery surrounding the location. White Ridge Barrow doesn't feel like a completed story. It feels like layers of failed ambitions left buried underground over generations. Ancient Nords built the crypt, necromancers invaded it. Hermaeus Mora's influence seeped into it, ash spawn emerged from it. And none of those forces ever fully erased the others. They simply just accumulated. That accumulation makes the ruin feel almost cursed by history itself. Every era leaving behind another dangerous secret beneath the last. And by the time the player finally leaves White Ridge Barrow, there's still a lingering sense that the location never revealed everything hidden inside it. The Black Book remains tied to Apocrypha. The Ash Spawn still exists. The deeper origins of the ruin remain unclear. Even after clearing the dungeon mechanically, the place still feels unresolved conceptually, like there are still unanswered questions buried somewhere beneath the ash and stone. That's what ultimately makes White Ridge Barrow one of the most mysterious and dangerous places in Skyrim. Not just the enemies, not just the hidden experiments, but the feeling that the ruin itself became unstable after centuries of forbidden knowledge, ancient death and unnatural power colliding underground. A place where history, magic and corruption layered over each other until nobody, not even the player, could eventually fully separate where one horror ended and the next began. High Hrothgar is one of the most recognisable locations in Skyrim, but at the same time it's also one of the most concealed. Not hidden in a traditional sense, everyone knows it exists, but hidden through distance, isolation and the sheer effort required to reach it. It sits at the top of the throat of the world, separated from the rest of Skyrim not by walls or secrecy, but by scale. The mountain itself acts as a barrier, making the monastery feel removed from normal life long before you ever arrive there. And that separation is what gives High Hrothgar its hidden quality. It's not a place you casually pass through, you have to commit to reaching it. That journey is a huge part of what makes the location feel concealed. The 7,000 steps aren't just a path, they're a process. As you climb higher, the rest of Skyrim begins to fall away behind you. Settlements disappear in the distance, the environment becomes harsher, and the world starts to feel quieter. There's a gradual sense of disconnection that builds with every step upward. By the time you're halfway there, it already feels like you've left the normal world behind. And the game reinforces that feeling constantly. The weather shifts, the air grows colder, the soundscape changes from movement and activity to wind and silence. Even the encounters along the way contribute to this separation. Frost trolls, wolves, and the occasional dragon don't just serve as enemies. They reinforce the idea that this path is difficult to reach on purpose. High Hrothgar isn't hidden behind a secret entrance or illusionary wall. It's hidden behind endurance. You have to earn access to it. That alone makes it feel different from most locations in Skyrim. Cities are designed to draw you in. Ruins are scattered naturally across the landscape. But High Hrothgar feels deliberately removed, positioned in a way that keeps it detached from everything below. And because of that, arriving there feels less like discovering a building and more like reaching a threshold. The monastery itself amplifies this feeling immediately. The architecture is simple, ancient, and restrained, lacking the grandeur you might expect from a place so important. There are no large banners, no signs of wealth or power, nothing designed to impress outsiders. Instead, everything feels stripped down to purpose. Stone walls, sparse interiors, quiet halls. It doesn't feel like a place built to be seen. It feels like a place built to be left alone. That quietness becomes one of the defining aspects of High Hrothgar. Unlike nearly every other major location in Skyrim, there's very little movement or activity. The Greybeards rarely speak, and when they do, every word feels deliberate. Conversations aren't casual, they're measured, restrained, almost ceremonial. That creates an atmosphere unlike anywhere else in the game, because silence becomes part of the location itself. And in a game filled with noise, combat, politics, movement, constant interaction, that silence feels unnatural at first. The monastery doesn't encourage exploration in the usual sense. There aren't distractions pulling your attention in different directions. Instead, it forces you to slow down, to focus on the environment and the people within it. That restraint is what makes High Hrothgar feel so concealed. It isn't trying to engage with the outside world. In fact, the Greybeards actively separate themselves from it. They live above Skyrim both physically and symbolically, detached from politics, conflict, and everyday life. Even though they possess immense power through the voice, they choose isolation over influence. And that choice is important, because it means High Hrothgar isn't hidden due to weakness or obscurity. It's hidden through intention. The Greybeards want separation. They literally maintain it. Everything about the location reinforces that philosophy. The climb discourages casual visitors. The environment discourages comfort. The people discourage unnecessary interaction. There's a sense that the monastery exists outside the normal flow of the world, preserved in a state that hasn't changed much over time. And that preservation creates a strange contrast with the rest of Skyrim. Below the mountain, the province is chaotic. Civil war divides the holds, dragons return to the skies, political tensions constantly shift. But High Hrothgar remains still, removed, untouched in a way that almost feels impossible, given everything happening around it. That stillness can feel comforting at first, but the longer you think about it, the stranger it becomes. Because High Hrothgar isn't disconnected due to distance alone, it's also disconnected by design. The Greybeards know what's happening in Skyrim. They understand the significance of events unfolding below them, and yet they remain apart from it all, choosing contemplation over intervention. That decision creates a subtle tension around the location. This is a place filled with knowledge and power, but also restraint to an extreme degree. And that restraint makes the monastery feel even more isolated. Not abandoned, not forgotten, just intentionally unreachable in every sense, except the physical one. Even the lore surrounding High Hrothgar reinforces its hidden nature. It's one of the oldest and most sacred places in Skyrim, deeply tied to the history of the Voice, the Dragonborn, and the worship of Kine. But despite that significance, it remains inaccessible to most people. The Greybeards rarely interact with the outside world, and ordinary citizens speak of them almost like myths rather than active figures. That creates an interesting contradiction. High Hrothgar is famous, but it is also unknowable. People know of it without truly understanding it. And that distinction is what keeps it feeling concealed despite its importance. The monastery also benefits from how the game introduces it. You don't reach it immediately. The story builds toward it gradually, treating the location as something distant and significant long before you ever see it. By the time you finally make the climb after killing your first dragon, the anticipation itself contributes to the feeling that you're entering somewhere separate from the rest of the world. And when you arrive, the game doesn't overwhelm you with spectacle. It pulls you inward instead. The halls are quiet, the rooms are basically sparse, the atmosphere is controlled. Everything about the place feels focused on removal. Removal from distraction, from conflict, from ordinary life. That minimalism is what makes it memorable. Because in a world as dense and active as Skyrim, High Hrothgar achieves something very few locations do. It creates absence. Absence of noise, absence of urgency, absence of connection to the world below. And that absence ultimately becomes its identity. Compared to other hidden places in Skyrim, which are often concealed through physical barriers or obscurity, High Hrothgar feels hidden philosophically. It isn't buried underground or tucked behind secret passages. It's visible from a distance. The mountain literally dominates the landscape. But visibility doesn't equal accessibility, and accessibility doesn't always equal understanding. That's why the location works so well within the theme of hidden places. Because despite being one of the most important sites in the game, it still feels separated from normal experience, in a way very few other places do. You don't just find High Hrothgar, you leave the rest of Skyrim behind to reach it. And once you're there, the separation becomes so complete that the world below starts to feel distant, almost unreal compared to the stillness above. That's what makes High Hrothgar feel truly concealed, not because no one knows it exists, but because so few people ever truly reach it, understand it, or belong there. It's hidden not by secrecy, but by isolation, intention, and silence. Some places in Skyrim call attention to themselves. Ruins scream, peaks crackle with dragonfire, shrines gleam with divine light. And then there's Lake Illinalta. It doesn't scream, it doesn't even speak. It just sits. A stretch of water so vast it breaks the horizon. Quiet, peaceful, beautiful, even trees lean gently at its edge. Birds circle overhead, reflections ripple in the shadows. But under the surface, it remembers. Because Illinalta isn't just a lake, it's a grave. And the things that sunk here didn't just drown, they were buried on purpose. Which could make this the most mysterious lake in all of Skyrim. There are many ruins across Skyrim. Few are as haunting as Illinalta's Deep. Near the lake's western edge, what looks like a rocky outcrop reveals itself to be the entrance to a temple half swallowed by water. Inside lies the wreckage of what was once a proud fortress of the College of Whispers, long since overrun. The current occupants, a necromancer, the former teacher who brought ruin not only to his students, but to the very walls of the temple itself. Obsessed with defeating death, he used the temple to conduct horrifying experiments with black soul gems and Azura's star. But the location of Illinalta's Deep raises more questions than answers. Why did the temple sink? Did the necromancer cause the collapse, or was he simply squatting in the ruins of something darker? Some believe the lake claimed the temple because of the rituals held within it. Others say the waters were drawn to the power of the star, pulled down by the weight of the souls trapped inside. But the truth is simpler and worse. Simply, no one cared, so the lake took it. Across from the ruin, near the northeastern part of the lake, lies a standing stone, the Lady Stone, resting quietly on its own tiny little island. It promises regeneration, healing, and rebirth, but it also sits alone, far from the roads and unguarded. Players rarely visit it more than once. In a game filled with guiding forces, the warrior, the mage, the thief, the lady stands apart, passive, isolated, ignored. But why? Some say it's simply underpowered, a gameplay design decision, which could be true. But in Skyrim, isolation is usually intentional. Perhaps the lady was once worshipped before the temple sank. Perhaps she watches over the drowned, or perhaps she's the reason nothing ever comes back from the bottom of the lake. She doesn't protect, she preserves. Scattered along Lake Illinalta's banks and shallows are a dozen sunken rowboats. Most are broken in half, some have skeletons slumped inside. One has a journal telling of a husband's ill-fated fishing trip. There was no major naval battles near Lake Illinalta, no official histories of floods or disasters. And yet, the boats continue to accumulate. One theory, Illinalta acts as a magical sinkhole, quietly pulling things in. Another suggests that the lake was cursed by the necromancer in Illinalta's Deep, creating a magical pool that drowns anyone who stays too long. But maybe the scariest answer is there's no curse. People just stopped rowing, and the lake doesn't ask why. Falkreath Hold and Riverwood sit close to Lake Illinalta. You'd expect there to be fishermen, trade, boats docked on its shores. But there are almost none. No harbours, no fisheries, no daily traffic across the waters. A few NPCs mention the lake in passing, but none really rely on it. And that silence? It's louder than any scream. Even Hod, Riverwood's lumber mill operator, who sits just a stone throw away from Illinalta, doesn't use it. He looks away from it, as if he knows something you don't. Nestled in the woods near the lake, players have discovered unmarked shrines, often desecrated, sometimes guarded by necromancers or bandits. One such site sits southwest of the Guardian Stone. Just 100 metres from the lake's edge, a necromancer patrols it, bones litter the altar. These shrines aren't connected to quests, they don't offer blessings, there's no lore associated with them in books or dialogue, but they all share a common trait. They're close to the water, which suggests something chilling. Lake Ilinalta doesn't just draw people in, it draws power. And maybe what it gives back isn't whole. In the quest The Black Star, we learn that Malin, once a respected mage, retreated to Ilinalta's Deep to perform his soul experiments. The College of Winterhold never speaks of him. Not even Nalakar, who sends you to investigate, says much about Malin's past. His name has even been stripped from history. But why did he choose Ilinalta? Why not a Dwemer ruin, a barrow, or even a hidden cave? The answer may be practical, proximity, isolation, but the answer may also be ritualistic. The waters of Ilinalta are still, deep, and ancient. And if you were going to bind souls, you'd want the world to forget where you did it, and water covers all sins, and Ilinalta never gives them back. Beneath the lake's surface are chests, weapons, and ruins, placed without any direct narrative reason. You can dive into the shallows and find helmets, coins, and bones. No enemies spawn there except for a few fishes, no quests lead you underwater, and no one talks about what's down there. That's what makes it chilling. Because Skyrim's design is rarely this empty on accident. If something is underwater, it was placed. And if it was placed, it means someone, somewhere, thought it belonged at the bottom. Exactly like the treasure map that leads you to the bottom of the lake where you find a chest. The lake didn't just drown bodies, it hid memories as well. Lake Ilinalta also plays a role in mods and cut content tied to Oblivion Gates and Daedric incursions. Players have speculated that it was once meant to be a gateway site, a place where Daedric magic pulled after the Oblivion Crisis. Though the game never confirms this, the repetition of necromantic activity, the sunken shrines, and the haunted silence all point to a history that's been intentionally removed. Skyrim doesn't rewrite history, it just drowns it. There are no bard songs about Lake Ilinalta, no tales in taverns, no epic poems of the sunken ship or heroic saves. Other places in Skyrim, like Riften's Canals or Solitude's Sea, have stories. Ilinalta has nothing, just a blank spot on the map. And maybe that's what makes it more terrifying than any haunted ruin. Because it's not forgotten, it's just ignored. And the people of Skyrim have learned not to speak of what sinks there. Skyrim is a land of stone and blood, of ruin and fire, but Lake Ilinalta is different. It doesn't shout, it doesn't whisper, it waits. It lets you forget what you saw. It lets you think it was a pretty view. It lets you move on. But it never really does. Because the things buried here, they weren't really meant to be found. And they weren't meant to stay dead either. They were meant to sink, to stay silent. Just like the lake that holds them, making this the most mysterious lake in all of Skyrim. Everyone in Skyrim knows about the many ancient ruins that can be found on the map. They sit atop mountains half buried in snow. They cling to cliff edges, hiding behind waterfalls. They wait in silence long after people who built them are dust. Some of these ruins are tied to quests. Some offer rewards. Some reveal clear history. But then there are others, places that exist without some kind of clear explanation, that kind of whisper rather than speak, that reward your curiosity not with treasures, but with questions. These are the places that leave you unsettled, that feel like they shouldn't have been uncovered, or like they're still waiting for something. And some are more mysterious than others. From the outside, Kagranzel seems like a small Dwemer ruin in a big building. But inside it becomes something else entirely. At first, it's quiet, a single room. In the centre, a glowing orb floats above a pedestal. You're told absolutely nothing. There are no enemies, no journals, just the sound of gears and the hum of Dwemer magic. However, surrounding the orb are 3 dead bandits who have clearly had a tough time with it. But if you activate the orb, it pulses. Then the lights go dark, and the floor vanishes beneath you. Suddenly you're falling hundreds of feet into a massive hidden cavern deep below the mountains. An underground lake stretches out before you, and on the far banks, Falmer wait. It's a trap. But why? The Elder Scrolls Online may offer a clue. In this, Kagranzal appears again, and the lore there suggests it was a Dwemer observatory constructed to detect incoming threats through visual and sonic projection. The glowing orb? A possible remnant of that mechanism. A magical bait system designed to lure intruders and send them plummeting into a kill zone. The Falmer didn't build this, but they found it. And now they live there, infesting the caverns like roaches in a collapsed vault. The Dwemer are long gone, but their trap still works. Yungol Barrow isn't a quest destination, unless you're specifically sent for Yungol's helmet. But once you enter, the game does change. Almost immediately, you're followed by blue glowing orbs. They flicker behind pillars, drift beside your character, follow you without explanation. They never attack, they never speak, they're just there. Some players can even miss them entirely. Others say they only appear under specific conditions. The game doesn't really log them, no enemies are tied to them, and even when you reach the end, facing Yungol's skeletal remains, they simply vanish. So what are they? The best clue lies in a book, Yungol and the Sea Ghosts. It describes the son of Yungol perishing on a sea voyage, dragged to the ocean floor by spectral forces. The glowing lights may be the spirit of his crew, or some form of ancient Nord death guardians. Yungol's tomb is protected by something. We just don't know what. However, no priest stands to watch, no dragger hold the gate, only these lights. Even though some say they're sea ghosts, some also say they're memories, and that makes them one of Skyrim's most elegant mysteries. Most dungeons in Skyrim have a door, but the Sightless Pit has a drop, and a massive one for that matter. Once you enter, you fall. There's no way back. You spiral down through dark Falmer tunnels, winding into the earth in a helix of rot and ice. But the name is fitting for what it's worth. It does feel designed to disorient and trap. The architecture becomes more twisted the deeper you go. Stone becomes fungus. Hallways turn into ribcage-like corridors. The final chamber is the Temple of Scrib, a cathedral of green mist and curved monuments that look almost biological. Falmer patrol here like priests, not guards. But there's no named boss, no central artifact, just tension and questions. Now the word Scrib is never explained in-game, nor does it appear elsewhere in the lore. However, some players believe this was once a Falmer place of worship, devoted to the twisted legacy of their underground life. Others suggest the Dwemer built it as a cruel form of containment, a spiritual prison for the enslaved snow elves. There's not many journals, no voice lines at all, just the implication that the Falmer still remember what they lost. And at the bottom of that pit, in the temple no one speaks of, they might still believe in something. That's what makes the Sightless Pit so disturbing. It doesn't trap you with the enemies, it traps you with belief. The Labyrinthian ruin is huge, a sprawling complex of tombs, towers and arcane chambers, hidden in the snowy fields near Morthal. It was once known as Bromjunar, a first-era city that served as an early Nord school of magic, a precursor to the College of Winterhold. In its prime, this was a place of learning, ritual and magical theory. But something went wrong. Very wrong. During the quest, the Staff of Magnus, you're sent here to recover a legendary artifact. Along the way, you encounter ghosts, echoes of students and teachers who came here before. You hear them joke, then fear, then argue, and then die. They came to retrieve the Staff of Magnus as well, but found something far worse. Morokai, a dragon priest of terrifying power, sealed in a magical barrier powered by the students themselves. They chose imprisonment over destruction, and for centuries they succeed. There's little written record about Mordecai's past. No grand legend, no inscription, only the prison. That's what makes it so strange. They didn't just fight, they built a containment system strong enough to hold a being that predates written history. But why? Why this ruin? Why this staff? And why a city of mages whose name no one remembers? Labyrinthian doesn't really tell you, but the silence says enough. Some magic wasn't meant to be studied, and some ruins weren't meant to be reopened. Avenchensel is the kind of ruin that doesn't speak through enemies or books. It speaks through ghosts. As soon as you enter, you see the first one, a ghostly Argonian, walking with her old expedition crew. They speak, joke, plan. They're echoes of a doomed mission, visions of the past played out in real time. As you follow them through the ruin, their mood kind of shifts. Excitement turns into fear, trust fractures, and by the time you reach the final chamber, their voices are gone. The story connects to a quest involving the Dwemer lexicon, which from deepest fathoms begs you to return. She speaks in riddles, clearly touched by something the lexicon showed her. This artifact, possibly tied to Hermarchus Mora, seems to hold forbidden knowledge. And the further the expedition carried it, the worse things became. There's no boss, no villain, no treasure beyond the lexicon. But the walls themselves hum with an unseen presence. Was the lexicon cursed? Or did the Dwemer build Avenchensel to house something else? Something no one should ever carry? These places aren't just dungeons. They're questions. Unfinished thoughts left by developers who seem to know exactly how much to show, and exactly how much to keep hidden. They give you whispers, ghosts, orbs, rooms that feel older than the 9 divines, lore that spans into the Elder Scrolls Online, because not every mystery needs solving. Sometimes it's more powerful when it's just there. Some places in Skyrim are loud. Their stories spill out the moment you step across the threshold. Bandits yell, necromancers chant, dragons scream from mountaintops and leave scorch trails behind them. And then there are quieter places. Places that aren't hidden but still feel unseen. Places where things don't quite add up. Where the land remembers something that the people may have forgotten. Where history hums under your feet but no one speaks about it. Roekstead is one of those places. You'll find it to the west of Whiterun, past the river and the ridges nestled in the Golden Plains. It has an inn, a few farms and some familiar names. There are even a couple of quests, if you happen to meet the right people. It looks just like another dot on the map. But stay a little longer, listen a little closer, because the longer you stand in Roekstead, the stranger it starts to feel, and the more you'll wonder what's really going on here. Roekstead appears ordinary at first glance. A cluster of homes, a small inn, a few NPCs tending to crops and livestock. It's the kind of place you might ride past on your way to Markarth, barely noticing it exists at all. And Skyrim doesn't mind if you ignore it. The game offers no formal reason to stop here, only for a quest. No guild sends you here, the town is content to remain on the fringe, both geographically and narratively. But that absence, the narrative silence, is exactly why people have been talking about Roekstead for years. Because despite its unassuming nature, the deeper you dig, the stranger it becomes. The town takes its name from Roek, a former Imperial soldier who says he purchased the land and turned it from barren waste into fertile fields. According to the UESP, Roek fought in the Great War, was injured and healed by his friend. After the war, the two of them settled here. Simple enough, right? Except Roekstead is ancient. It's mentioned in the bard's song Ragnar the Red, a traditional ballad that predates the events of Skyrim by generations. Even more strangely, the town is referenced in 2 much older texts as well, with one of them being the Atlas of Dragons. The former refers to Roic steading in the first era thousands of years ago, and yet Roic is alive, healthy, and just here. The optimistic view is that this is a coincidence, that Roic is a recycled name, which it could be. But this is Skyrim, where names rarely repeat without reason, and timelines usually hold together with mythic precision. That dissonance between Roic the man and Roicstead, the ancient location, is unsettling. Roicstead isn't just old, it's miraculously productive. Dialogue from various NPCs confirm that the land around Roicstead used to be barren. The holdings of Jarl Geirlund describe it as nothing impressive. Yet somehow, it's the most fertile farmland in all of the Whiterun hold. One NPC even jokes that Roicstead could start exporting its soil. Farming is also rarely mentioned outside of Roicstead, and nowhere else in the game boasts this kind of prosperity. How did a town with no known blessings, no special location, no divine favour, and no apparent irrigation suddenly bloom into the headbasket of the region? Magic, maybe? Alchemy? Or perhaps a pact? When you step into the homes of Roicstead's residents, you'll find some strange things. Soul gems are placed on shelves and tables, which are odd trinkets for simple farmers, right? In Roic's manor, a copy of the book Spirit of the Daedra sits unguarded. There are no obvious mages living in the town, no alchemists and no temples. So why the magic paraphernalia? There's also an odd conversation with Roic's daughter, in some playthroughs depending on schedules. She speaks to a man who speaks quietly of magic. He warns the girl not to tell the others. It's a moment that can easily be missed, but when paired with the Daedric book, the soul gems, and the uncanny prosperity of the town, it begins to look a lot less like coincidence and more like remnants of something kept hidden. If you've ever played Skyrim even once, you remember Lockyer. He's the thief from Roicstead, introduced in the game's opening cart ride. However, Lockyer dies before the prologue ends. But here's the strange part. No one in Roicstead remembers him, even though he hails from there. No NPCs mention him, there's no house that once belonged to him, not even a passing reference. Even more tantalizing, a cutscene from Bethesda's Creation Kit demo once showed the developers editing a location called Lockyer's Tomb. It was fully modelled, fully fleshed out, but never used. Whether it was scrapped, unfinished, or meant for later DLC, the message is clear. There was meant to be more to this story. There's a theory first floated on Reddit and later picked up by YouTubers like Fizzy, that Roicstead is a Daedric cult in disguise. The theory does fit too well. The soul gems, the Daedra text, the suspiciously fertile land, the secrecy of magic training, the disappearance of Lockyer, the oddly elderly residents who never age. What if the town made a deal with the Daedric Prince of Pestilence and Order, or Mephala, who thrives on secrets and manipulation? The people of Roicstead may have battered their souls, or their memories, and if that's true, it would explain why no one remembers Lockyer, why the town folk live in ignorance, and a deal was made, and the silence was part of the price. Roicstead doesn't shout. It doesn't demand your attention like Solitude's courtyards or Windhelm's gates. It speaks in whispers, through the rustle of the wheat fields, the creak of wooden carts, and the low murmur of farmers tending their land. The inn is calm, the streets are empty, even the people speak as if they're trying not to wake something ancient beneath the soil. There are quests here, if you know where to look. A young man dreams of becoming a hero. A few deliveries pass through the village, but none of it breaks the spell. The tone stays the same, measured, restraint, almost reverent, as though the entire town is holding its breath. What makes Roicstead feel mysterious isn't what happens here, it's what doesn't as well. No one talks about the Dragon Mound just beyond the ridge, no one mentions Haygraven Shrine nearby. No one seems disturbed by the soul gems in their neighbours' homes. They just till the land, eat their meals, and sleep in peace. And that silence, the choice to carry on without question, is louder than any shout from a dragon. Rokstad is not empty. It's quiet. And in Skyrim, quiet can mean danger, or a secret waiting to be kept. There's a certain kind of place in Skyrim, a place that was built, populated, maybe even scripted, and then seemingly forgotten. Cut content, internal decisions, lore shifts. Whatever the cause, the result is the same. A place that feels almost finished, but not quite. Rokstad is that place. And that's why people are still talking about it over a decade later. Rokstad is easy to miss. It doesn't call attention to itself. It doesn't throw a dragon in your path. It doesn't offer glory or gold, but it lingers. It sits in the back of your mind like an itch. A question without an answer. A town that should mean nothing and yet means everything. In a game that explains so much, Rokstad stands apart. It keeps its secrets. It buries its truth in old books, strange artifacts, and quiet homes filled with unnatural life. Because sometimes the most mysterious places in Skyrim aren't the ones full of monsters. They're the ones that just sit there, smiling, pretending that they're normal, when everything around them says otherwise. Across the wind-swept plains of the Whiterun Hold, where the tundra stretches endlessly beneath a pale sky, there grows something that should not exist. A tree. But not just any tree. Its bark shimmers faintly with violet light. Its roots twist through stone and ash, and its sap, known as the sleeping tree sap, induces dreams so vivid they blur the line between reality and illusion. The sleeping tree, found at Sleeping Tree Camp, is one of the most mysterious landmarks in Skyrim. No lore explains it fully. No scholar agrees on where it came from. Some say it was a piece of the mythical Tower of Nirn, torn loose during the creation of the world. Others whisper it fell from the stars, a fragment of Hermaeus Mora's realm. Or perhaps the remnant of a giant's dream that took root in the waking world. It is both beautiful and unsettling, alive yet alien, and that is what makes it Skyrim's most mysterious place. The Sleeping Tree Camp lies west of Whiterun, nestled between the plains and the mountains. The camp itself is simple, a few giant tents, a cooking fire, and at its heart, the glowing tree itself. The giants who inhabit the camp seem to worship or protect it. Unlike their kin, it's as if even they understand that this tree is sacred or dangerous. The landscape around the tree seems changed by its presence. The ground is oddly coloured, the grass is sparse, and the air is faintly hazy, as though the world itself is holding its breath. There is no sound of wind here, no bird song, only the faint hum of something ancient, something that doesn't quite belong. The most bizarre and defining feature of the sleeping tree is its sap, a rare substance that can be collected in vials. It glows faintly purple, and when consumed, it grants the drinker immense vitality and strength at a cost. The sleeping tree sap temporarily increases stamina and resistance, but also induces a stale, dreamlike fog. Users report hallucinations, strange visions, and in extreme cases, unconsciousness. Some suggest that the tree feeds on these dreams, that it drinks the consciousness of those who taste its essence. In Skyrim's world, where potions and alchemy are commonplace, the sap stands apart. It doesn't behave like a natural mixture, it feels alive. There are even merchants in Whiterun who seek to trade in the sap, implying that this bizarre substance has become part of Skyrim's underground economy. Half medicine, half narcotic. Its effects blur the line between reality and dream, and the source of that power only deepens the mystery of the tree itself. Scholars and travellers have long debated where the sleeping tree came from. Each theory is stranger than the last. Some claim that the sleeping tree was born of a meteor, a seed carried through the void that crashed into Skyrim long ago. Its otherworldly glow and unnatural resilience seem to support this theory. If true, it would mean the tree is not of Nirn at all, but a relic of another realm, or another world entirely. Others believe it was flung into the air during the eruption of Red Mountain, carried by divine or Daedric forces before landing in Whiterun's tundra. The reddish hue of its roots, reminiscent of volcanic glass, could support this origin. Perhaps the most chilling theory ties it to Hermaeus Mora herself, the Daedric Prince of Knowledge and Fate. The tree's alien appearance and dream-inducing sap mirror the strange, organic structures seen in Mora's realm. If so, the tree could be a tendril from that realm, reaching into Skyrim to observe or corrupt the minds of mortals. None of these explanations are confirmed. They might never be. And that's what makes the sleeping tree so fascinating. It resists understanding. It refuses to fit neatly into Skyrim's known mythology. Perhaps the most peculiar aspect of the sleeping tree is not the tree itself, but its guardian. The giant who lives here does not attack on sight. This is almost unheard of in Skyrim, where giants fiercely protect their mammoths and territory. But if you do get too close, just be wary that you will be sent into the sky like I did. Yet, at the sleeping tree, they are calm. Some travelers believe these giants are dream-bound, enslaved by the tree's sap. Their somewhat gentle behaviour could be the result of constant exposure to its hallucinogenic power, leaving them in a state of perpetual trance. Others believe they are its chosen protectors, creatures who understand the tree's cosmic importance in a way mortals cannot. Whatever the truth, the relationship between the giant and the tree only adds to the camp's eerie mystique. It is a place of peace, yes, but peace of a strange, unnatural kind. In Whiterun, you may encounter Ysolda, an ambitious trader with dreams of independence. She asks the Dragonborn to collect sleeping tree sap for her, implying that she already has connections to its distribution. Her request opens a window into an unsettling truth. The sap is not just a curiosity, it's a commodity. If she is willing to buy it, that means someone is selling it. Somewhere in Skyrim there exists a quiet trade in the sap, its users chasing the vivid dreams it induces. In a land of hardship, perhaps they see those dreams as an escape. This commercialization of something so alien, so potentially dangerous, is deeply Skyrim in spirit. It reflects the world's indifference to mystery, how wonder and horror alike are reduced to trade goods and coin. The sleeping tree, then, is not just bizarre in its existence, it's bizarre in how casually the world accepts it. The very name sleeping tree implies a state between wakefulness and unconsciousness, a threshold. Some mages speculate that the tree acts as a conduit between Nirn and the dreams of Aetherius. Perhaps those who drink its sap enter not mere hallucinations, but glimpses of another plane of existence. There are whispers of travellers who fell asleep beneath its roots and never woke up again. Others awoke days later, speaking of vast forests of light, endless skies, and the voice of a great tree, whispering in a language no mortal tongue could speak. If true, this makes the sleeping tree not just a plant, but a living portal, one that connects Skyrim's physical world with its spiritual or cosmic dimensions. And if it is dreaming, then perhaps in some strange way, all of Skyrim dreams with it as well. It's ironic that Skyrim's most bizarre phenomenon lies so close to its most familiar city. Whiterun, the heart of trade and politics, stands as a symbol of normalness in Skyrim. Its walls are safe, its people proud, its leadership stable compared to the chaos elsewhere. Yet just beyond these walls, in the plains where mammoths wander, grows a tree that defies all natural law. It's as though the two coexist in deliberate contrast. Whiterun represents the mortal world, stable, rational, and civilized, while the sleeping tree embodies the cosmic and unknowable. Every day, merchants, soldiers, and travellers pass within sight of its faint purple glow, never questioning its presence. It is the bazaar hiding in plain sight. The sleeping tree is one of Skyrim's greatest enigmas, a living contradiction that blurs the line between plant, god, and dream. It stands in quiet defiance of explanation, its roots sunk deep into the bones of the world, its branches reaching towards something beyond mortal comprehension. In a land defined by war and prophecy, it reminds us that not all mysteries can be solved, and not all beauty is meant to be understood. Maybe the tree really does dream, and maybe when we stand beneath it, we dream with it. Whatever its truth, the sleeping tree remains Skyrim's most mysterious and bizarre place, an alien heart beating quietly beneath the open sky, whispering to anyone who dares listen that the world of men is smaller, stranger, and far more magical than they will ever know. In the far northern reaches of Skyrim, nestled between frost-bitten cliffs and blizzards that never rest, lies a place few known, and even fewer survive. The Chill. To most, it's not even a location. They've never heard of it, never seen it on the map, and certainly never dared to stumble into it by chance. It doesn't announce itself, nor does it offer the illusion of justice and fairness. Instead, it whispers a warning in the howling wind. This is where Winterhold sends those they wish forgotten, and within its glacial prison walls lies the skeletal remains of prisoners long dead. Silent, frozen figures who raise more questions than answers. The Chill is unlike any other prison in Skyrim. It is the only hold facility not managed by jailers or city guards, but by conjured frost atronics, elemental beings of ice who offer no sympathy, no nourishment, and no reprieve. And in the farthest corners of this glacial cave, you find them. Locked cages, bedrolls iced over with time, and the bones of those who never left. But who are they? Why are they left to die? And what does this unassuming location tell us about Winterhold, the college, and the darker undercurrents of Skyrim's justice system? The Chill is not labelled on any map and cannot be found through exploration alone. In fact, the only way most players discover it is through an arrest in the hold of Winterhold, one of the least populated and most isolated regions in Skyrim. When you choose imprisonment over a fine in this hold, instead of waking up in a city cell, you awaken in a cave. The walls are slick with frost, the air is heavy with silence, the cells are small, metallic cages with adept-level locks. 3 of them line the cave's walls. Each cage contains a bedroll, some bones, and all emit a chilling aura of neglect. But unlike other jails in Skyrim, there is no exit mechanism, no waiting guard to release you after time has passed. This is a place where you are meant to escape or die in. But what truly sets the Chill apart is what you find when you look closely at the details. 2 of the cages contain human remains. There are no journals, no named markers, no dialogue triggers to identify them. The game offers no quest or backstory. It gives you only the image of these bones, curled up on bedrolls sealed behind iron bars. The implication is bleak. These were real prisoners, once alive, who died from exposure, starvation, or perhaps even at the hands of the frost trolls themselves. One cannot help but wonder, why are they so forgotten? Were they simply low-level criminals the Jarl wished to dispose of? Were they mages cast out of the College of Winterhold for breaking rules that went too far? Or were they political prisoners? People whose continued existence threatened the fragile order of a crumbling hold. There is one possibility that adds a particularly tragic angle. The college has a dark history. Members involved in necromancy, Daedric worship, and magical incidents have vanished with little explanation. These skeletal remains may be proof of those stories, evidence that the college doesn't exile its most dangerous members to the wilds, but locks them away in the Chill, where their mistakes can be quietly erased. While every other hold in Skyrim uses guards and jailers to maintain order, Winterhold relies on the frost trolls, summoned ice elementals. This is more than a mere aesthetic choice. It's emblematic of how Winterhold views its prisoners, not as citizens who've broken the law, but as expendables. People unworthy of even basic human dignity. These Frost Atronachs don't feed, speak, or care. They won't hesitate to kill a prisoner attempting to escape. And their cold, mindless efficiency makes them the perfect tools for silent execution. If a prisoner were to die of starvation or illness, no guard would know. No reports would be filed, no one would ever visit the Chill to retrieve their body. This system absolves any human of moral responsibility. It allows the authorities of Winterhold, whether the Jarl or the College, to maintain plausible deniability. The Chill operates like a machine, and the Frost Atronachs are its gears. Players have speculated wildly over the years about who the skeletons in the Chill may have been. Some theorists suggest that they could be remnants of the Great Collapse, the mysterious cataclysm that destroyed much of Winterhold and left the city in ruins. Perhaps in the chaos, the Jarl's court turned to the cruel punishments to maintain control. Others think the bones could belong to mages who dabbled in Daedric rituals or Black Soul gem magic, criminal acts even in the arcane lenient halls of the college. Reddit and the Elder Scrolls forums have pointed to possible connections with the Sigic Order or the remnants of the Mythic Dawn, hiding in plain sight and eliminated when discovered. Still, others believe the prisoners may not be criminals at all, but scapegoats. People who knew too much about the college's experiments, or who bore witness to things the Jarl's court wanted buried. There's also the uncanny silence about the Chill in-game. No NPC mentions it, not even the guards or mages. You only hear about it when you're going to jail. It's almost as if everyone in Winterhold is pretending it doesn't exist. This kind of narrative omission is pretty rare in Skyrim, and often a signal that something darker lurks beneath the surface. The use of magic for containment and execution is a theme deeply ingrained in Skyrim's lore, but in the Chill, that theme is taken to its coldest extreme. Unlike the Dwemer ruins, this isn't a mystical place meant to awe, it's meant to erase. Prisoners here aren't just locked away, they're deleted. No one comes looking for them and no one knows their names. It's a brutal metaphor for the unchecked power of Winterhold's institution. The Jarl, weakened and powerless, in a hold lost to time, may be clinging to order by any means. The college, unregulated and secretive, could be using the Chill as a dumping ground for their mistakes. And that makes the skeletons more than just a set dressing. They are narrative relics, fossils of a system that no longer sees justice as rehabilitation, but as erasure. Skyrim is full of mysteries, but few are as quietly chilling as the Chill. The prison offers no quests, no dialogue, no direct lore, but it tells a story all the same. Through its design, its silence, and the forgotten bones of the prisoners, it paints a picture of a hold struggling to maintain power, a college guarding its secrets, and a justice system that would rather you freeze in silence than be heard in defiance. The skeletons remain not just as relics of failed escapes or neglected prisoners, but as symbols of a broader truth in Skyrim. Sometimes the coldest places aren't just made of ice, they're made of indifference. And in the end, maybe that's the scariest mystery of all. Because even in Skyrim, it's very rare to see something as neglected as this. Some places in Skyrim demand your attention. You see them glowing on the compass, quest markers drag you towards them, dialogue pushes you into their history. And then there are others, the ones that just kind of exist. You pass by them without knowing, maybe a dozen times, or maybe more. They're tucked between riverbanks, cliffs, or collapsed roads. Places so natural you think they're just empty. And then one day, you take the wrong path along the White River, southeast of Windhelm, and you hear it, a waterfall. You step behind the edge of it, expecting a cave or maybe just a dead-end pool. But instead, you find a door which leads to the abandoned prison. And after 13 years, I still think about what I found inside. The abandoned prison has no quests tied to it. No event sends you here, no bounty board, and no courier note. In fact, until the Anniversary Edition added a brief fishing creation and alternative start functionality, there was literally nothing pulling the player here. But it's fully modelled, fully voiced, and fully abandoned. Somewhat. Cells, skeletons, a crumbling hallway system, a mess hall, quad quarters, all the things you'd expect from an official prison facility. But no name, no official history, and no memory. It feels like it was just turned off. As if the Empire simply forgot about it, or chose to. As soon as you enter, you noticed what caused the ruin. Water. Torrents of it, pouring through cracked ceilings and corroded stone. The White River flows into the prison, breaking the walls, pulling at your feet, and cutting off some corridors entirely. This was not an attack. It was time. And the prison didn't die in flames, it drowned. Furniture floats, cell doors hang from broken hinges. There are signs of a hasty evacuation, but not a complete one. Because bodies still remain, and they're not all in their cells. Most dungeons in Skyrim follow a clear path. You find enemies, you fight through it, and then you loot. The abandoned prison follows something more subtle and much more disturbing. The guards are still here, skeletons in full Imperial armour, sprawled near collapsed beams, one even hanging off a stairway, with its sword still drawn. Some tried to escape, but some didn't make it. There are signs of conflict, but not war, and just desperation. Something happened here, something fast, maybe a collapse, maybe the flood, and the Empire. They didn't clean it up. They left it. Or perhaps they were never allowed back in. In the lower section of the prison, if you look carefully, you'll find two documents. A guard's note describing rising water levels and damaged infrastructure, and a prisoner's journal smuggled out through a crack in the wall, detailing the last days of incarceration. The guard is worried, but focused, and the prisoner is terrified. They describe guards abandoning posts, confusion in the halls, water seeping into the bunks, and then silence. There's no record of an evacuation order, no mention of outside reinforcements, just fear and then stillness. As if the prison sealed itself off, and as if the world moved on without it. Unlike places like the Chill, the abandoned prison doesn't have a defined cultural or political role. Not Dunmer, not Daedric, and not Stormcloak. There's no shrine, no racial banners, no inscriptions. Which raises a question. Who really built this? Some speculate it was a pre-Empire military site, a temporary holding facility. Others think it was Nordic, later co-opted by Imperial forces. The most compelling theory, however, is it was a secret Imperial site, never intended for the public, and used for prisoners the Empire didn't want associated with major cities, political dissidents, war deserters, witch hunts, and once it became unstable, it was sealed and forgotten by design. The level design here is simple, but haunting. You start at the top, collapsed halls, collapsed roof, half-buried furniture. You move down into cells, low chambers, bunk beds, and broken kitchens. And then you end up in the lowest area, where water runs the deepest, facing a room that looks like it was never meant to be escaped from. Iron doors, no windows, no light. And you realise this wasn't just a holding facility, was it? It was a final stop. Some of these prisoners were never meant to be transferred. They were meant to disappear. The abandoned prison sits at a strange fork in the White River, between Mixwater Mill and Valheim Towers. You can walk past the waterfall a dozen times and never notice the door tucked behind the mist. There's no obvious path, no combat outside, and no glowing loot. Just rock, water, and the faint splash of stone. And if you never poke behind the falls, you never find it, which makes it feel more like a secret than a dungeon, and more like a memory than a location. You expect the abandoned prison to be somewhat empty, a ruin, a forgotten pile of flooded stone and rusted bars. And for a moment, it is. But then the air kind of changes as you move deeper into the dungeon. A chill creeps in, deeper than the cold of the White River's spray. And as you step deeper into the lower levels, where water laps at your ankles and the torchlight flickers against the mildew-slick walls, you see them. The ghosts of the abandoned prison. Flickering, semi-transparent forms. Their faces long gone, their bodies faded into grey mist. But their rage is very real. These aren't spirits drifting in mourning. They attack, silently, swiftly, with old iron weapons that should have rusted into the dust long ago. They moan in bursts of grief or fury, and when they vanish, they don't fall, they disperse. As if they've finally realised it's too late, that they're no longer alive. This kind of place is a place where lore enthusiasts love to break down. It's a ruin with no direct quest, documents you can miss, skeletons telling half the story, and environmental design that reveals secreted silence. The kind of location where every object matters. A knocked over chair, a cell that was locked but broken open, a table set with untouched food. It's more than storytelling, it's ghostwriting, and Bethesda left the pen right where you can find it, if you're paying attention. 13 years later, after my first playthrough of Skyrim, I still think about that waterfall, how quiet it was, how strange the prison felt inside, complete, deliberate, and utterly unspoken for. You can walk away from it, loot it, use it as a home base, or never return. But something about that space sticks with you. A jail where no one survived, a facility no one remembers. And a story that was buried not by war, but by water, time, and the game's refusal to explain itself. Some places in Skyrim want you to be a hero, but this one kind of just wants you to listen. What makes a place truly mysterious in Skyrim isn't just hidden lore or unanswered questions. It's the feeling that even after you've explored everything, something still doesn't fully make sense. These locations leave gaps on purpose. You find fragments of stories, strange details, ancient powers, and pieces of history that never completely connect together, no matter how close you look. And instead of giving clear answers, Skyrim often leaves players with implications, letting the atmosphere and the unknown do most of the work. That's why these places stay memorable for so long. Because mystery creates curiosity in a way straightforward storytelling can't. The less certain you are about what really happened somewhere, the more your mind keeps returning to it afterward. And Skyrim understands that perfectly. Some of the game's most fascinating locations aren't the ones with the biggest battles or the best rewards. They're the places that leave you unsettled, confused, and still searching for answers long after you've already left them behind. Skyrim is a world where something is almost always happening. Dragons attack cities, bandits ambush roads, caves hide monsters, and even the quietest towns usually have some kind of story waiting beneath the surface. But strangely, there are a few places in Skyrim where absolutely nothing happens. No major quests, no important NPCs, no huge battles or hidden secrets waiting to be uncovered. Just empty stretches of the world that feels forgotten, overlooked, or strangely disconnected from everything around them. And that's what makes it so interesting, because in a game filled with constant danger and discovery, finding a place where the world suddenly goes quiet can almost feel unnatural. Like you're stepping into an area Skyrim itself barely remembers exists. Skyrim is filled with people, hundreds of them. Farmers, guards, innkeepers, mages, bandits, children who yell at you like you stole their lunch money. Each one of them exists for a reason, or at least they try to. Some give you quests, some sell you potions, some dramatically die in front of you to prove that this dungeon means business. And then there's Snored, a man so unremarkable, so untouched by questlines, so entirely devoid of purpose, that he accidentally becomes one of the most fascinating NPCs in the game. Snorid doesn't roam the roads of Skyrim. He doesn't stand out in the wilderness, waiting for players to stumble across him like some forgotten side character in a B plot that never got written. He lives in solitude. More specifically, he sleeps in the East Empire Company warehouse, a restricted access zone you're not supposed to enter unless you're on official business, which you probably aren't. And that's fitting, because Snorid doesn't want to be seen. You'll find him curled up on a bedroll, tucked away among crates and clutter. He doesn't patrol, he doesn't eat, doesn't work, he just sleeps, and sleeps, and sleeps. Like a man trying to speedrun through life with the fast travel button permanently held down. The only time he ever gets up is if he's attacked, at which point he'll fight back, briefly, then return to unconsciousness, metaphorically and probably literally. And if you do try to talk to him, he gives you the warm, friendly greeting of,
"You're not supposed to be in here."
That's it? That's the extent of Snorid's engagement with the world. Here's the thing. Almost every other NPC in Skyrim is part of a machine. A radiant system, a faction quest, a city's ecosystem. They fit in the game's design like gears in a clock. Snorid is like a marble in a blender. He doesn't move, he doesn't connect to the world in any real way. If you removed him from the game, I bet 99.9% of players would never even notice. He's not a character, he's the absence of one, which is weirdly bold when you think about it. In a game about shouting dragons out of the sky and becoming the champion of 16 different gods, Snorid is just trying to get through the day. He's like an anti-hero, but not in the edgy, morally grey way. More like an anti-entity, if that makes any sense at all. He defies narrative, and maybe, just maybe, that's the narrative Bethesda were going for. Okay, so maybe he's just a dock worker, right? He's in a warehouse, maybe he's off shift. Nope. Snorid has no job routines at all. No AI packages for hauling crates or clocking in at the East Empire Company. He's not listed in the employee registry in any meaningful way beyond existing. You don't see him hauling anything. He never interacts with anyone. There are NPCs in the warehouse who do go about their business. Snorid is not one of them. He has a job title, technically. Technically, he's a Nord employee, but that's about it. He is, in the most literal sense, an employee who has never worked a day in his life. He has no dialogue trees, no duties, no story hooks, no ambitions. Snorid is not a participant in Skyrim's economy. He is a bystander in its sleep cycle. But again, he has a name, and in Skyrim, a name actually means something. Right? Let's do a lore check. Open the wikis, comb through the UESP, look at game files, try to find a journal, a letter, a passing reference in someone else's quest. Anything to tell us about Snorid. Well, if you happen to do that, you won't find anything at all. There's no backstory, no implication of a backstory, no hints that a backstory might have once been drafted and then deleted. Snorid exists without context. He's not mentioned by any other NPC, he doesn't write, doesn't speak, doesn't appear to age, he just is. In a city filled with corruption, military tension, and royal politics, Snorid is none of it. He is the most background character imaginable, which somehow makes him stand out even more. Let's give Bethesda some credit. What if Snorid is deliberate? What if he's meant to represent something? A developer joke? An artistic metaphor? A weird social experiment to see how many people would sneak into a restricted area and find a man taking a decades-long nap? There's something almost performance art about it. You have hundreds of characters fighting and yelling and dying to give the game its drama and texture, and then one guy who's just sleeping on the job. He doesn't need your help, he doesn't want your attention, he doesn't want to be awake. He is the silent witness to a world in motion. Skyrim is tearing itself apart, literally, and Snorid's just hoping it'll quiet down before his next REM cycle. Honestly, he might be the smartest one in the whole province. Here's what's wild. Despite doing nothing at all, Snorid has a small but devoted fan base. You'll find posts about him on forums. Who is this guy in the warehouse? Why is there a Nord just sleeping in solitude? What's the whole point of Snorid? Some players even roleplay explanations for him. He's a smuggler in hiding, he's cursed to sleep forever, he's the last honest worker in the East Empire Company. Snorid is a canvas, a void you can probably project meaning onto. Because that's the thing. In a game where everything is designed to pull your attention, a character who asks for none of it becomes oddly magnetic. He's not trying to impress you, he's just here, like a box or a barrel or a goat that wandered indoors and nobody wants to deal with. Snorid is part of the world, not part of your story. And that is what makes him unforgettable. Let's zoom out. Snorid is, in many ways, a weird commentary on NPCs themselves. What does it mean to be a character in a world built entirely around the player? If every other NPC exists for you, to teach you something, to fight you, to quest with you, then Snorid's refusal to participate is almost revolutionary. He's not broken, he's resistant. He's the first NPC who's looked at the player, shrugged and said, "Nah, I'm good." Maybe he knows he's in the game. Maybe he's achieved a higher level of awareness. He's the NPC who realised the futility of it all. While others chase glory, fame, dragon-slaying titles, and enchanted swords, Snorid has reached enlightenment. He is free. Or, maybe someone just forgot to delete him during development. But let me dream, I don't know. Let's be honest. Not all of us are the Dragonborn. Most of us are, Snorid. We stay in bed longer than we should. We try not to attract attention. We have no grand quest. You don't shout people off mountains or become head of the East Empire Company in a week. We just exist, watching things happen around us, occasionally wondering if you're supposed to do something else, rather than watch a video about a Skyrim NPC who does nothing at all. Snorid is the mirror we rarely want to look into. He's what happens when a game built on power fantasies leaves a crack open for ordinary silence. And somehow, the silence is louder than any dragon shout. He doesn't fight the world, he endures it. Quietly and alone. Maybe that's depressing, but maybe it's really not. Maybe it's a kind of comfort. Because if Snorid can find peace in just sleeping in a drafty warehouse, maybe we all can as well. Snorid is an NPC who does nothing. Not metaphorically, not hyperbolically. Literally nothing. No quests, no fights, no purpose, and no arc. And yet, he stays in your mind. Because in a world full of distractions, Snorid offers stillness. In a province that demands your attention, he gives you nothing to look at. And somehow that makes you stare even harder. In a game that begs you to be the hero, Snorid is a man who never asks you to be anything. And maybe he was a mistake, a leftover asset, an unsigned dialogue tree that wandered into the warehouse and never left. Or maybe, just maybe, he's Skyrim's quietest masterpiece. The only NPC in all of Skyrim that does nothing. And somehow that means, quite literally, everything. Skyrim is a game that thrives on chaos. Dragons descend from the sky to attack unsuspecting villagers, bandits demand your money or your life, and vampires can turn even the safest city into a blood-soaked nightmare. Every road leads to an adventure, and every cave promises danger, treasure, or both. Yet in this sprawling living world, there is one place that defies the very nature of Skyrim. One location where nothing happens at all. A place forgotten by the game itself. That place is known to be Stendarr's Beacon. Why is it that this lonely outpost, perched on the southeastern edge of the map, might just be the most intriguing place in all of Skyrim? When you first stumble upon Stendarr's Beacon, you might think it's like any other location in Skyrim. After all, the game conditions us to expect something, anything when we enter a new area. Maybe there's a quest here, a hidden treasure, a secret boss. Skyrim loves to reward exploration, so surely something is waiting at the top of this hill. But as you approach, the realization dawns, there's nothing here. Stendarr's Beacon is an outpost for the Vigilance of Stendarr, a faction devoted to hunting down Daedra and those who consort with them. But unlike other faction locations in Skyrim, the College of Winterhold, the Thieves Guild, or the Dawn Guard, this place serves no real function. You can't join the Vigilants, they don't give you quests, and aside from a handful of NPCs pacing around and mumbling about Stendarr's mercy, there's almost no reason to be here. Even when you do encounter the Vigilants elsewhere in the game, they don't talk about Stendarr's Beacon at all. It's almost like Bethesda put it in the game and then forgot about it. Which raises the question, why does it even exist at all? To understand the emptiness of Stendarr's Beacon, we need to talk about the Vigilants of Stendarr. On paper, they seem like a faction that should be important. Their whole thing is fighting Daedra, which in-game, literally called the Elder Scrolls Skyrim, sounds like it should matter, but it doesn't. The Vigilants exist as a cautionary tale, a group of self-righteous zealots who vastly overestimate their own strength. Their reliance on simple weapons, robes, and faith makes them laughably weak against any major threat. They claim to be Skyrim's protectors, but they get absolutely annihilated the second a real Daedric threat appears. This is made painfully clear when you start the Dawn Guard DLC. The very first thing you learn, the Vigilants of Stendarr are dead. The entire hall of the Vigilant has been wiped out by vampires, and if you go there, all you'll find are corpses and destructions. Harkon's forces didn't just attack them, they exterminated them. It's one of the only times Skyrim tells you outright these people lost. There was no grand battle, no heroic last stand, just failure. And Stendarr's Beacon? It's the last vestige of this failed order, a tiny group of survivors clinging to the ruins of their beliefs. They don't fight back, they don't rally a resistance, they just exist. It's strange to call anything in Skyrim forgotten, because for the most part, Bethesda designed the game to be engaging no matter where you go, even in remote locations like an abandoned shack in the woods. These often hold some kind of story, but Stendarr's Beacon doesn't. It's just there. Even its geography makes it feel unimportant. It's off in the corner of the map, sitting awkwardly between Riften and the border of Morrowind. If you're not actively looking for it, you'll probably never find it at all. And even if you do find it, you'll probably never return. Think about it, how many times have you actually visited Stendarr's Beacon in your playthroughs of Skyrim? I'll bet the answer is either once or maybe twice, if you were really trying to 100% the map. But after that, it fades into the background, overshadowed by the countless locations that actually do something. But here's where things get interesting. What if the fact that nothing happens at Stendarr's Beacon actually makes it the most fascinating place in the game? Think about it. Skyrim is a world teeming with adventure. Everywhere you turn, something is demanding your attention. Even the smallest caves or roadside ruins have something. A note, a body, an ambush, something to interact with. The game is meticulously crafted to keep you engaged at all times. And yet, in the middle of all that, Bethesda left a space where nothing happens. A true outpost of nothingness. This could be intentional. Stendarr's Beacon might be a relic of a different design philosophy, one where not everything needed to have a purpose. It stands as a rare example of restraint in game design, where the developers simply let a place be, rather than turning it into yet another piece of content. Or maybe they just forgot to add anything interesting. Who really knows at this point? In a game filled with grand narratives, maybe Stendarr's Beacon is meant to be a moment of quiet reflection. The few Vigilants who remain, despite knowing they are doomed, still uphold their duty. It presents a rare, almost tragic picture of perseverance. There is something poetic about this last stand that never turns into an actual battle. Maybe we're not supposed to fight here. Maybe for once we are just supposed to observe. In a way, this silence feels intentional. Bethesda gives us countless battles, betrayals, and supernatural horrors throughout Skyrim. But at Stendarr's Beacon, there is only stillness. The remaining Vigilants continue their prayers, seemingly unaware that they have already lost their war. This eerie, contemplative atmosphere forces the player to consider something rare in Skyrim, a battle that has already been lost, with no way to change its outcome. It's a type of storytelling that works precisely because nothing happens. Other locations give you a chance to intervene, to change the fate. Stendhal's Beacon doesn't. It stands as a reminder that some things in the world, both in fiction and reality, are beyond saving. Perhaps that's why it feels so unsettling. We're so used to Skyrim letting us be the hero, that when we find a place where heroism is meaningless, it stands out. And that makes Stendhal's Beacon one of the most haunting places in the game. One of the most fascinating things about Stendhal's Beacon is that its true story isn't told through dialogue, quests, or scripted events. It's something you have to piece together. Skyrim is a game that often hands the player grand narratives, but here Bethesda takes a different approach. Instead of giving you a story, they leave behind the absence of one, forcing you to ask your own questions. Why didn't the Vigilants rally after the destruction of their hall? Why don't they seem to acknowledge their inevitable demise? Are they stubbornly holding on to their faith, or are they just waiting for the end? There are no answers, only the silence of a forgotten outpost. In a way, this makes Stendhal's Beacon one of the most immersive locations in Skyrim. It doesn't spell anything out for you, and yet its existence tells a story of failure, loss, and quiet resilience. It challenges the player to think beyond the game's mechanics, to consider what happens when a faction that was supposed to protect the world simply ceases to matter. Maybe that's why it feels so eerie. Stendhal's Beacon is a place where the story has already ended, but the characters just haven't realised it yet. And in a game where the player is always the centre of a narrative, finding a place where you don't matter is something truly rare. One of Skyrim's greatest strengths is how its world changes as you play. Cities react to your choices, factions rise and fall, and even the Civil War reshapes the land. But Stendhal's Beacon stands apart because it never changes. No matter how many dragons you slay, how many Daedric princes you defy, or even if you side with the vampires and wipe out the Dawn Guard, the beacon remains the same. Stendhal's Beacon is the only place in Skyrim where nothing happens. And in a way, that makes it one of the most thought-provoking locations in the game. It's a monument to a faction that failed, a place left behind by a world that has long since moved on. It's a reminder that not everything in a game needs to have purpose, and that sometimes the most interesting places are the ones that don't try to be. So the next time you're wandering through the mountains of Skyrim, take a moment to visit Stendhal's Beacon. Climb to the top, look out over the land, and appreciate the silence. Because in a world as chaotic as Skyrim, sometimes nothing happening is the most meaningful thing of all. Some places in Skyrim aren't meant to be noticed. They sit off the road, not on it. They glow with no torches. No name hovers over the screen until you're nearly at the doorstep. No quests, no characters of note, but they're still watching you. On the cold coast of East Windhelm, where snow sinks into the sea and the wind forgets to blow, there's a cabin. It's called Trader's Post, and nothing ever happens here, but it exists, and somehow that makes it worse. Trader's Post is a small wooden house built where no one should live. It clings to the edge of Skyrim's northeastern coast, north of Mixwater Mill, southeast of Windhelm, and surrounded by silent falling snow. No road leads to it, no map points you in its direction, and when you finally stumble across it, if you ever do, it doesn't greet you with dialogue or narrative. It doesn't even introduce itself. It just squats there, abandoned and still, like it's trying to forget it was ever built. But someone is there. Bandits live inside, but not many, just 3, as if they can't even be bothered to show up in numbers. There are bear traps laid across the snow outside, carefully arranged, rusted open, some half buried under thin layers of snow. They're not meant for you. Well, not specifically. They're just there. Sprung, waiting, forgotten. Like someone put them out one night in fear and never came back to check them. Or like they've become a ritual, something the bandits do out of habit. Inside there are crates, a bedroll, a few scattered items, and some minor loot. No books, no journals, one chest that is almost worth writing home about. No name on the mail, no dreams on the pillow, just a place, just a cabin, and just a post. A post for what, though? That's the question Skyrim never answers. Trader's Post is a loaded name. It implies betrayal, a hidden history, maybe a secret meeting ground for someone who fled a war, maybe a last stand for someone who changed sides, maybe a forgotten outpost for soldiers who never made it back. But the game never tells you who the traitor was. There are no letters on the table, no burnt flags, no signs of conflict or identity, just bandits who don't speak and traps that don't matter. The name stands on its own, however, like a ghost of meaning, the kind of name that feels left over from a story they never got written, or one that was erased on purpose. The bandits in Trader's Post are exactly what you expect. Hostile, forgettable, functionally identical to every other trio of low-level thugs in Skyrim. They don't carry unique names, they don't have unique loot, they don't even have a unique formation. One waits outside, one stands on the porch, one paces in the snow. It's as if the game placed them there using a template, just enough to make you draw your sword, but not enough to make you ask why they're there. And maybe that's the point, because these bandits aren't protecting anything. They're not holding down turf, they're not hiding stolen gold or rare treasure. They're just occupying a space that no one else wanted. They're just filling the silence. If you open the map, Trader's Post barely registers. The area east of Windhelm is cold, flat, and mostly devoid of landmarks. No cities, no quests, no Daedric shrines or dragon burials. It's a space in Skyrim that feels like a canvas no one painted on. Even the snow here seems tired. Nearby are a few animals, some sparse tundral plants, and the occasional hunter or a saber cat. But there's no real reason to be here. No faction will send you this way. No courier will deliver a letter with a clue. No NPC will ever say the words Trader's Post out loud. The house just waits, but not for you, and not for anyone else. In-game development, not everything gets to be finished. Some places were meant to host a quest that got cut. Some locations were built for encounters that never got written. And sometimes, things were added to break up travel distance, to fill space, to keep the world from feeling empty. But here's the irony. Trader's Post feels empty anyway. It has bandits, it has traps, it has a name and a location and a geometry. But it doesn't have anything else. It feels like the house itself was forgotten mid-sentence, as if a designer put it in, planning to come back, and never did. Unlike other abandoned homes in Skyrim, places like the Abandoned Shack or the Alchemist's Shack, Trader Post doesn't tell a story through bones or blood. No skeleton slumped over a desk, no journal half-written, no lingering spell effects or strange music cues. Nothing supernatural, nothing emotional, nothing memorable. And that's what makes it feel so uncanny, because the lack of detail here isn't atmospheric, it's unsettling. It's like the house is trying to disappear, like it knows it shouldn't exist, but yet it does. You won't be sent here. Not by a Jarl, not by a mage, not by a Daedric prince. There's no side quest that leads you to the front door, no bounty notice that mentions this place. Not even radiant quests, those endlessly repeating objectives will pull you in. If you find this place, you find it alone. And nothing happens when you do. You only get one marker cleared, no dialogue opens, no music plays. You kill the bandits, check the containers, maybe spring a trap, and then you leave. That's it. And the game forgets you were ever there. Skyrim is somewhat of a game of noise. Dragons scream, shouts echoing in mountain passes, quest markers that pull you from cave to cave and city to city. But Trader's Post is quite opposite of that. It is a house defined by its lack of things, a moment on the map where no story happens, a named location that exists purely as a whisper. And like the old Roldan Inn or Pilgrim's Trench, its silence says something. Something about the world, something about forgotten places, and something about people who once mattered, and then didn't. Inside the shack at Trader's Post, there's a fire pit. The logs are in place, arranged as if someone meant to build a fire but never struck the flint. And that's the kind of detail that lodges in your memory. Because in Skyrim, fires are everywhere. Lit braziers, roaring hearths, torches in tombs. Warmth is a signal that life is near, but this one is quite cold. And it raises the question you can't answer. Were the bandits squatting here temporarily, waiting to move on? Were they left behind by a bigger gang, forgotten like the cabin itself? Or did someone else once live here? Someone who vanished before the flames ever caught? The fire feels symbolic of the whole location. Something half finished, something half remembered, half abandoned. Like someone stopped writing mid-page and never picked up the pen again. So the pit sits cold, not because it went out, but because it never burned in the first place. Most homes in Skyrim feel alive. Even abandoned ones hint at memory. Someone once cooked here, someone once fought here, and someone once prayed here. But Trader's Post doesn't. It doesn't remember anything, and it doesn't care that you're here. You can clear it, you can avoid it, you can return 20 levels later and find the same traps, the same nameless bandits, the same snow on the roof. It's not haunted, it's not cursed. It's just empty, a home with a name with no story. The only home in Skyrim where nothing happens. And maybe that's exactly why it stays with you. Skyrim is a world that thrives on momentum. Cities clash over ancient thrones, guilds pull you into webs of political intrigue, and every crypt, cave, and corner seems to contain a secret just waiting to be uncovered. The land is teeming with activity, bursting with possibility, and yet nestled in the snow-covered hills west of Solitude stands a tower so overlooked, so unremarkable, that it feels like the world has simply passed by it. That place is Pinefrost Tower. To call Pinefrost Tower a location almost feels generous. It's not much more than a crumbling ruin sitting on a ridge, staring blankly into the cold northern sky. Most players won't even know it exists. It's not marked on the map until you get really close. No one ever mentions it. No quest points you there, and once you arrive, there's no reward, no confrontation, no narrative breadcrumb to follow. There's just nothing. Some places in Skyrim are forgotten not because of their location, but because of their silence. Last time we explored a lonely outpost in the southeast, a beacon, Stendar's beacon, that stood vigil for a war that never came. This time we travel in the opposite direction, both geographically and spiritually, to another structure that's been abandoned not with fire or blood, but with indifference. When you first spot Pinefrost Tower, it seems to hint at significance. A tall stone structure, partially intact, sits like a lone sentinel over the snowy landscape. It has the air of something meaningful. Maybe a lookout post from the days of Skyrim's early history, a lost military outpost, a secret bandit den. Skyrim trains you to expect something, and so naturally you investigate. But when you reach the top, all you find is a dead bandit, a bedroll, and a chest with some randomized loot and some gold. That's it. No journals, no letters, no ghosts, no traps, no clever puzzles. In a game so dense with content, Pinefrost Tower feels like an absence. It gives you a named location and then offers absolutely nothing to justify the existence. Even the most inconsequential caves in Skyrim often have a bit of flair. A skeleton posed dramatically, a scrawled note, a bit of visual storytelling. But Pinefrost Tower has none of that. It is a place that dares to do nothing at all. Skyrim rarely leaves you alone. Even its silence usually comes with meaning. A barren tundra might lead you to a hunter's cabin. A still lake might conceal a sunken chest. But the tower is one of the only places where the silence is total. The game doesn't try to pull you deeper. It doesn't whisper a story in your ear. It just stands there. This is a place where the world stops speaking to you. There's no music cue, no ambient tension, just wind and snow and stone. You can almost imagine that Bethesda placed it there as kind of a forgotten placeholder, a landmark that was going to matter and then didn't. A tower built for a quest that never got written, or maybe it was never meant to matter. Maybe it was always supposed to be a place that simply exists, and in that way it becomes strangely poetic. If Pinefrost Tower does have a story, it's one you have to invent yourself. Why was the tower built? Who lived here? Was it ever manned by soldiers? Or was it always just another waypoint in Skyrim's vast, uncaring wilderness? There's a strange kind of sadness to it. The dead bandit at the top wasn't killed in some epic battle. There was no scorch marks, no arrows, no drama. It looks like they just stopped living one day. Their body, like the tower, is a remnant without a reason. You could imagine them as a fugitive hiding from the law, taking shelter in the ruins only to succumb to the cold or starvation. Maybe they were trying to start a new life out there, away from the chaos of the world. Maybe they were just passing through, but Skyrim evidently gives you nothing. No prompt, no text, no closure. And in doing so, it opens a vacuum your imagination can fill, but only if you choose to, because the game itself does not really care. There's something powerful about a place like Pinefrost Tower. In a game that constantly rewards you with XP, gold, dialogue decisions, Pinefrost Tower offers only a bit of that. It is content without consequence, a landmark without law. And in that sense, it almost feels subversive. Modern games, especially open-world RPGs, are obsessed with making every corner of the map matter. Developers cramming collectibles, quest hooks, Easter eggs, and side stories to make every step feel productive. But here, Pinefrost Tower quietly resists that philosophy. It is one of the few places in Skyrim that trust the player to be okay with not being rewarded. It dares to offer an experience that's purely atmospheric. You reach the summit, look out over the snow-covered peaks, hear the wind howl, and that's it. No fanfare, no deeper meaning, just a moment of stillness in a game obsessed with movement. The only real sense that makes it feel like a place in Skyrim is the 2-leveled frost trolls or ice wraiths that greet you. But even then, that all feels irrelevant. Unlike Skyrim's grand ruins, ancient Nord barrows and Dwemer cities frozen in time, Pinefrost Tower is a modern relic. It doesn't belong to some mythical civilization. It's not tied to the gods or the dragons. It's just a ruin. And that makes it feel weirdly grounded. This is not a ruin of legend, this is a ruin of circumstance. It could have been a military outpost, a bandit lookout, a hunter's retreat. And like so many forgotten places in our own world, it simply fell out of use. Now it decays, ignored, and unimportant. Its stone walls aren't lined with glowing crystals. Its secrets are not protected by puzzles. There are no ghosts here, only echoes. This place never changes. No quest sends you back here. No character ever mentions it. It isn't updated or reused in DLC, and once you visit it, it remains exactly as you left it. And that makes it one of the rarest things in all of Skyrim. A place that exists entirely outside the story. You cannot affect it, and it does not affect you. That kind of narrative isolation is rare in games, and even rarer in Skyrim. Almost every other location in the game is connected to something bigger, but Pinefrost Tower feels like a place that exists purely for itself. It doesn't care whether you're the Dragonborn, or a wandering thief, or a lost alchemist. You are irrelevant here, and in that irrelevance, there is some kind of freedom. What Pinefrost Tower truly reveals is the strange luxury of a world that's too large to be entirely known. Skyrim is a curated experience, but it also allows for the possibility of places that fall through the cracks. Pinefrost isn't broken, bugged, or glitched. It's just there. It doesn't tie into any of the game's main systems. It doesn't complete a checklist. And that might be the most honest kind of realism Skyrim offers. Because in the real world, not every ruin has a plaque, not every corpse has a diary. Sometimes things are abandoned and no one remembers why. Sometimes a place just exists, quietly eroding under the snow and time. That's what this tower is, a digital ghost of intention. Maybe half built and half forgotten. It doesn't need you to be there. But the fact that you found it, the fact that you noticed its absence of meaning, makes it meaningful in a completely different way. Pinefrost Tower is a place in Skyrim where nothing happens. And in a world built on chaos, that makes it feel unforgettable. It is a monument to nothingness, a tower without a purpose, a ruin without a story, a location the game itself seems to have forgotten. And maybe that's why it matters. Because in a game where you are always the hero, always the center of the universe, this tower offers something rare, a moment of quiet, a place that asks for nothing of you, a reminder that not every story needs a conflict, and not every place needs a point. Sometimes the most powerful locations are the ones that let you feel small. In a game like Skyrim, it's easy to overlook the quiet people. The world is filled with shouting Nords, storming battle mages, and ancient dragons clawing their way out of time. Cities burn, Jarls scheme, and you, the player, are usually at the center of it all. But if you ever stop sprinting from one quest marker to the next, if you wander off the beaten path, sometimes the world lets you find something else. Something forgotten. And something small. Not magical, not dangerous, just quiet and strange. If you walk through the mountains, you will come across him, in his little shack, isolated in the hills. And that's what might make him the loneliest NPC in all of Skyrim. Froki's shack is exactly what it sounds like. A tiny wooden structure half collapsed and huddled against the cliffs in the southern mountains of Skyrim. It isn't near a road, it isn't near a town, it isn't even on the way to anything really. There's no marker, no reason to come here, just stone, snow and silence. If you do find it, it's probably by accident. Maybe you were scaling the cliffs looking for the Shrine of Talos. Maybe you were chasing a fox through the trees. Maybe, like me, you were just bored of fast travelling and wanted to see what lived in the margins of the map. And then you see it. A shack, a fire, some smoke, a sign that someone actually still lives up here. Froki is an old Nord, grey-haired, worn. He greets you with suspicion, like someone who stopped trusting visitors a long time ago. He wears simple clothes, no armour, no rings. He's not a quest giver in the traditional sense. He doesn't beg for help or praise your accomplishments. He just sits near the fire watching the wind cut through the trees. But if you talk to him, if you really stay for a while, you'll learn that Froki used to be something more. A hunter, a soldier, a worshipper of the old gods. A man who once fought for Skyrim, but who gave up on it a long time ago. He's one of the only living followers of Kine, the ancient goddess of the storm and sky, and he teaches her ways to his grandson, Hamming. But that's right, Froki isn't entirely alone, is he? But it still feels like he is. If you've ever played Skyrim from the start, Hamming might sound familiar. He's one of the first NPCs you ever meet, a child from Helgen who survives the dragon attack at the beginning of the game. You see him escape with his father as the town crumbles. And then nothing. His father disappears, his home is gone, and Hamming is never really mentioned again. Unless, of course, you find this shack. Because this is where he ended up, living with his grandfather in the middle of nowhere. No books, no toys, no friends, just a half-burnt shack, some hunting lessons, and the howling wind. Skyrim doesn't tell you what happened to his father. The game doesn't really care. And maybe that's what makes it worse, because it's not just Froki who's lonely, it's the boy too. Two forgotten characters stitched together by absence. And maybe that's why Froki always seems so angry. Froki doesn't like you. Not at first, anyway. He doesn't trust the companions, he doesn't believe in the 9 divines, and he especially doesn't believe in the Empire. To Froki, Skyrim lost its way when it forgot about the old gods, when it traded the wildness of Kine for the bureaucracy of the divines. He sees the modern world as weak, corrupt, disconnected from the land. He speaks in quiet, judgmental tones, not bitter, exactly, just disappointed. It's easy to write him off as another cranky old Nord, but if you listen closely, Froki's anger is grief. He's mourning a Skyrim that no longer exists, A time when men lived in the mountains, prayed to the sky, and didn't need thrones or temples to find meaning. That world is gone, and so Froki left the world with it. Or maybe the world left him. If you earn Froki's respect, usually by showing interest in Kine, he gives you a quest, but not a normal one. No, kill this bandit or fetch this artifact. Instead, he tells you to visit Kine's sacred shrines and hunt the guardian spirits that dwell there. It's a simple task. Go to another remote hill, fight a ghost animal, and then return. But the journey takes you across the wildest parts of Skyrim. Deep forests, hidden cliffs, forgotten glades. And every time you fight one of Kine's guardians, you realise something. These aren't really evil spirits. They're not threats. They're sacred. They're symbols of the natural world, proud, powerful, and ancient. You're not killing monsters. You're proving that you understand them. And when you return to Froki, he doesn't cheer. He just nods. Like you've finally learned something he's known for decades. Talking about Froki's home, it isn't cozy. The walls are crooked, the floor is cracked, there's no food on the table, no clutter, no warmth. There are almost no visitors except for myself and other players. No signs of trade, no books, no notes, no letters. Froki doesn't even have 2 beds, one for him and one for his grandson. So I'm assuming they sleep in the one bed. But maybe Froki's shack wasn't meant to last. Maybe it was meant to be temporary, a place of exile, or pilgrimage, or mourning. But years passed, and the world didn't ask for him to return. So he didn't. That's the question that lingers, long after you leave. Did Froki really choose this? Did he walk away from civilization because he believed in something greater? A forgotten god? A purer way of life? Or did he lose everything and build his life out of the ruins? We'll never really know, will we? Skyrim doesn't really give us any answer to this. Froki doesn't have a good backstory quest or a personal journal or a friend who speaks about him in town. He is utterly and completely disconnected from the rest of the game. And in a world where everything is usually tied together, from Daedric cults to court intrigues, that kind of disconnection is rare, because it almost feels real. People like Froki exist. People who lose faith in the world, who retreat, who vanish into the hills, not because they hate people, but because they've been hurt by them too many times. Froki's not a villain. He's not even a hermit. He's just tired. Froki doesn't die in a grand battle. He doesn't leave behind a powerful weapon or a buried secret. When the game ends, he's still there. Still sitting by the fire, still raising a boy who lost his home. Still praying to a god no one remembers. And maybe that's what makes him the loneliest NPC in Skyrim. Not because he's alone, but because he's untouched and unclaimed by any major questline, any war, and any epic conclusion. He exists entirely outside the game's design, which means Froki isn't really here for the player. He's here for himself. Froki's shack isn't a dungeon. It's not a shrine. It's not even marked on most maps. It's just a shack, a house, in the mountains, slowly decaying under the snow. But it holds something that most places in Skyrim don't. Stillness. Not the quiet of peace, but the quiet of grief, of memory, and of choice. Because Froki isn't a forgotten character. He's a character who chose to forget the world. And somehow, that's kind of more haunting. The wind never stops blowing around his home, the fire never quite warms the room, and the boy, Hamming, never says much of anything. But they're there, together, waiting for something that probably won't come. Maybe Kine, maybe peace, maybe nothing. And as you leave Froki's shack and the snow begins to swallow the roof behind you, you might realise you weren't really meant to find him. But now that you have, you won't forget him. There are ruins across Skyrim, broken forts, fallen watchtowers, crumbling gnawed barrows. But few carry the same quiet tragedy as Fort Snowhawk. Situated between Morthal and the western marshes, it's easy to miss. Its walls are half swallowed by swamp fog and time. At first glance, it's just another military ruin, occupied by bandits or necromancers depending on when the player stumbles upon it. But beneath those stone walls lies something older and far stranger. The ghost of a city that once stood here, one of Skyrim's forgotten settlements. In the Elder Scrolls arena, Snowhawk was no mere outpost. It was a full city, bustling, walled and proud, a stronghold in the Reach before the world forgot it. Yet by the time of Skyrim, 2 eras later, the city has vanished entirely, its name preserved only in the decaying ruin of a fort. No citizens remain, no merchants, no guards, not even a single house. This is the story of the city that disappeared, and of the fort that remains to remember it. Fort Snowhawk sits in a desolate patch of Yarlmarch, a region dominated by mist, mud and decay. To its east lies Morthal, one of Skyrim's smallest and eeriest towns, itself built on a swampland and half-forgotten legends. To the west rise the jagged peaks that border the Reach. Between them stands the fort, crumbling and silent. Its placement is strategic, but odd. The fort commands no road, guards no mine, and overlooks no trade route. Most forts in Skyrim serve a clear purpose. Fort Amol near Windhelm protects the road to Eastmarch, while Fort Greenwall guards the Rift's northern border. But Snowhawk? It watched over nothing. It's isolated, sunken into marshland that seems to devour it year by year. And that's what makes it so unsettling. The landscape itself feels complicit in its disappearance, as though the earth wanted to erase it. The mist rises, the grass grows over the stone, and what was once a proud city fades into something no one remembers. To understand the curiosity of Fort Snowhawk, you must return to the Elder Scrolls arena. In that game, the very first in the series, Snowhawk was a functioning city-state, one of several regional powers within Skyrim. Alongside Winterhold, Falkreath and Solitude, it stood as a bastion of civilization in the wild north. Its ruler, the King of Snowhawk, governed from sturdy walls, and its people were as hardy as any in the province. But by the 4th era, the name survives only as an echo. The city has fallen off maps, absent even from the mouths of Skyrim's oldest historians. No one in Morthal mentions it, no bard sings of it. It is as though the world itself decided to forget. This disappearance isn't unique in Tamrielic history. Empires rise and fall constantly. But Snowhawk's erasure feels deliberate. Cities decay, yes, they do all the time. But names persist. The ruins of Helgen remain on the lips of travellers. The ghosts of Labyrinthian are remembered by mages, and even Sarthal, destroyed thousands of years ago, lives on in story. Snowhawk, however, is gone. What could erase a city so thoroughly that even its name becomes just a fort's afterthought? Fort Snowhawk is the only surviving trace, a military ruin that still bears the name of its ancestors. It is a relic built on older bones, likely constructed over the ruins of the original city's walls. Its architecture, however, tells a different story. It is imperial in style, with square battlements, iron gates and arched corridors. That means it was rebuilt, likely during the late 3rd era, after the fall of the actual old Snowhawk. So what stands today is not the city, but a replacement. A fort built to occupy the same ground, perhaps because the land held strategic or symbolic importance. Yet the Imperial engineers could not erase what came before. When you walk through its ruined halls, the layout feels strange. Too sprawling for a simple fort, too enclosed for a city. There's a sense that the stones themselves remember more than they should. And that leads to the central mystery. Why was Snowhawk reduced to this single ruin? And why does no one speak of it anymore? Among fans and lore scholars, several theories attempt to explain Snowhawk's disappearance. None are official, but each feel disturbingly plausible. One theory claims plague, that disease swept through the city, perhaps carried by the swamp waters or brought by travellers from the Reach. The marshland around Fort Snowhawk is known for sickness. Morthal's inhabitants even mention bog fever and strange ailments that take root in damp air. Perhaps the city was abandoned when it became unlivable, its people fleeing before disease claimed them all. Another theory suggests war. The Second Era saw Skyrim torn apart by civil conflicts, and Snowhawk, located between territories claimed by the Reachmen and the Nordic Jarls, may have been a casualty of those wars. Fort Snowhawk's later Imperial reconstruction does support this. It might have been built atop ruins left by some long-forgotten siege. The most haunting theory, however, is magic. Some whisper that Snowhawk fell to necromancy, that its last days were marked by experiments too dangerous to control. And when the Dragonborn explores Fort Snowhawk in Skyrim, it's crawling with necromancers. The air hums with black energy, and corpses line the halls. What if they didn't invade the fort? What if they just returned to it, reclaiming the site of some ancient atrocity? As I've said, when the player first encounters Fort Snowhawk, it is usually under the control of necromancers, a fitting if eerie fate. The halls are filled with robed mages raising skeletons and their rituals through the dark. There is something chillingly appropriate about this occupation. The necromancers bring death to a place already buried by history. But what's more intriguing is the implication that they were drawn here. Skyrim is full of ruins, yet these mages choose Fort Snowhawk. Why? Perhaps because the land itself remembers death. Perhaps the city's fall was not natural, but magical. A blight of sorcery that still taints the soil. The necromancer's presence transforms the fort into a tomb within a tomb. You're not just clearing out bandits, you're disturbing something that was already dead twice over, once as a city and once as a fort. It is as if Snowhawk cannot stop dying. Perhaps the strangest part of Snowhawk's story is not its fall, but its absence from Skyrim's culture. No one remembers it. You can ask scholars, guards, or jarls, no one will speak of its name. Even the College of Winterhold, which preserves ancient records, makes no mention of it. In a world where everything leaves ruins and rumours, Snowhawk leaves silence. This silence is what turns the mystery from historical to existential. Snowhawk wasn't merely destroyed, it was forgotten, and in Tamriel, forgetfulness is kind of a death. When names vanish, spirits fade. When no one remembers, history itself dissolves. One might imagine that Snowhawk's ghosts still wander the marshes, watching over the ruined fort, desperate to be remembered, trapped between existence and oblivion. Morthal lies only a short walk from Fort Snowhawk, and its people speak often of strange lights and noises in the marsh. Yet they never mention Snowhawk at all. It's as though an unspoken agreement keeps them from acknowledging it. Some players theorise that Morthal itself may have been born from Snowhawk's survivors, those few who fled the city before it fell and resettled nearby on safer ground. It would explain the town's reclusive nature, its fascination with the dead, and its deep-rooted mistrust of outsiders. Even the town's Jarl, Ravencrone, speaks like a woman haunted by memories she doesn't fully understand. If that theory is true, then Morthal isn't merely a strange swamp town. It's the shadow of a tragedy, a remnant of a city that used to be. The ruins of Fort Snowhawk still stand, lonely and unremarked on, visited only by adventurers on their way to Morthal or soldiers sent to die for a war they barely understand. Yet beneath its foundations lies the memory of something greater, a city erased by time, a name nearly lost. Snowhawk once stood as a proud city-state, a beacon in the Reach. Now it exists only as whispers in fan theories and the faint hum of necromantic rituals echoing through the broken halls. It is a city that lives only in absence, the missing city of Skyrim. And in that absence lies its strange immortality. For though no one remembers Snowhawk, the mystery of its vanishing ensures it will never be completely forgotten again. Skyrim is a land that constantly tries to grab your attention. Dragons circle overhead, cities tower over the tundra, ancient ruins promise treasure and danger beneath every mountain. But sometimes the most interesting places in Skyrim are the ones that don't truly stand out. They blend into the landscape, they look ordinary, they quietly wait for someone curious enough to notice. One of the best examples of this is Pine Watch. At first glance, Pine Watch is nothing more than a small shack, sitting peacefully in the forests of the Falkreath Hold. It looks like dozens of other cabins scattered across Skyrim's wilderness, a place where a lone hunter might live quietly, far away from the chaos of the cities. Most players ride past it without a second thought, but beneath that unremarkable little house lies one of Skyrim's most surprising secrets: a hidden criminal operation, an underground hideout, and a quiet connection to the powerful Thieves' Guild of Riften. Pine Watch may look forgettable, but that is exactly the point. Pine Watch sits just west of Helgen and north of the road that winds to Falkreath. The surrounding forest is dense and quiet, filled with towering pines and the distant sounds of wildlife. In other words, it's the perfect place for a secluded home. When you first arrive, the shack seems completely normal. The cabin contains the typical items you might expect: a bed, a table, a cooking pot, and a few scattered belongings. Nothing about it screams danger. Nothing suggests hidden tunnels or criminal conspiracies. And that is exactly why Pine Watch works so well. Because Skyrim is full of shacks like this: hunter cabins, abandoned houses, small farms. They are everywhere. Players become accustomed to them and stop questioning what might be hidden inside. Pine Watch relies on that assumption. It disguises itself as something mundane in a world where players have learned to ignore the mundane itself. The true nature of Pine Watch reveals itself only if the player begins to explore more carefully. Hidden within the shack is a concealed passage leading underground. Behind the innocent-looking cabin lies Pine Watch Bandit's Sanctuary, a sprawling hideout filled with criminals, traps, and stolen goods. Suddenly, the quiet cabin transforms itself into something much more sinister. What looked like a peaceful home is actually the entrance to an entire underground operation. Bandits move through the tunnels below, guarding treasure and maintaining a secret base far away from the eyes of Skyrim's authorities. It's a clever twist. Many Skyrim dungeons begin with dramatic ruins or imposing caves. Pine Watch begins with a humble wooden door and a small chimney puffing smoke into the forest air. It doesn't look like an entrance to anything important, which is exactly why no one suspects it. The importance of Pine Watch becomes clearer during the Thieves' Guild questline, particularly the quest Silver Lining. During this mission, the player is sent to recover a valuable silver mold from Pine Watch, revealing that the hideout is connected to criminal networks operating across Skyrim. This small shack in the forest is not just a random bandit camp. It is part of a much larger system. The Thieves' Guild, despite being headquartered in Riften far to the east, maintains influence throughout the province. Pine Watch acts as one of their quiet outposts, a place where stolen goods can be hidden, guarded, and moved without attracting attention. In other words, Pine Watch is a piece of Skyrim's underground economy. And yet, if you never join the Thieves' Guild, you might never learn that at all. At the centre of Pine Watch's operation is Rigal Strongarm, the woman who lives in the shack above. At first, she seems harmless, just another NPC occupying a remote cabin. But if you venture deeper into the sanctuary below, her true identity becomes clear. Rigal is the leader of the bandits operating beneath Pine Watch. The peaceful resident upstairs is actually the mastermind of the entire hideout. This dual identity adds an extra layer of intrigue to the location. Regal's role perfectly reflects Pine Watch itself, an ordinary surface hiding something much darker below. She lives above ground, maintaining the illusion of a simple life, while commanding a network of criminals beneath the forest floor. It's a quiet deception, one that mirrors the subtle storytelling Bethesda often hides within Skyrim's world. What makes Pine Watch particularly impressive is the scale of what lies beneath it. The underground sanctuary is far larger than the small shack above suggests. It contains multiple chambers, living areas, and defensive positions filled with bandits guarding their territory. Traps line the corridors, enemies patrol the halls, loot is scattered throughout the rooms. It feels like a full dungeon, one that players would normally expect to find beneath an ancient ruin or a massive cave entrance. Instead, it's hidden under a single wooden cabin. That contrast is what makes this place so memorable for the players who actually discover it. The realization that something so large could exist beneath something so small creates a sense of wonder, and perhaps a little paranoia about what else might be hidden across Skyrim. Pine Watch's location in the Falkreath Hold is also significant. Falkreath is known for its forests, its graveyard, and its quiet atmosphere. Compared to cities like Markarth or Windhelm, it feels calm and remote. But that calm hides many secrets. Bandit camps dot the surrounding woods. Necromancers experiment in hidden caves. Dark Brotherhood assassins once operated nearby. Pine Watch fits perfectly into this landscape of hidden danger. It reflects the idea that Falkreath's forests are not as peaceful as they seem. Beneath the trees and mist lie criminals, conspiracies, and forgotten stories waiting to be uncovered. The shack at Pine Watch is simply one more secret buried in the woods. Despite its hidden complexity, Pine Watch remains one of the most unnoticed locations in Skyrim. There are several reasons for this. First, it lacks visual spectacle. There are no towering ruins or dramatic landmarks drawing players towards it. Second, it sits in a forested area that players often pass through quickly while travelling between cities. Thirdly, its entrance looks identical to dozens of other cabins scattered across the province. Players become conditioned to expect nothing special from these small buildings. After exploring a few hunter cabins and finding nothing interesting, they stop checking. Pine Watch takes advantage of that habit. It hides its secrets in plain sight. One of Skyrim's greatest strengths is its use of environmental storytelling. The ability to tell stories through locations rather than dialogue. Pine Watch is a perfect example of this. The shack above tells one story, a quiet life in the woods. The sanctuary below tells another, a network of bandits living and working together in secret. By combining these two layers, the game creates a subtle narrative without needing long conversations or expositions. Players who only glance at the shack see nothing unusual. Players who explore deeper uncover an entire hidden world. This layered design rewards curiosity, a key theme throughout Skyrim's exploration. Skyrim is often remembered for its grand moments, dragon battles, ancient prophecies, and epic quests. But the world's true magic lies in its quiet discoveries. A forgotten campsite, a hidden cave, or a simple wooden shack in the forest that turns out to be something far more dangerous than it appears. Pine Watch reminds us that exploration is not just about chasing markers on a map. It's about curiosity. It's about stepping inside the unremarkable cabin and wondering what might be hidden behind the walls. Because sometimes the most unnoticeable place in all of Skyrim is hiding the biggest secret of all. And Pine Watch has been keeping its secret for a very long time. What makes these places so strange isn't that they're empty, it's that Skyrim usually isn't. The world is built around constant movement, constant discovery, always trying to pull your attention toward the next fight, the next quest, and the next piece of lore. So when you finally find a place where all of that stops, it stands out immediately. These locations feel disconnected from the normal rhythm of the game, not abandoned, not unfinished, just quiet in a way Skyrim rarely allows itself to be. Places where ruins repeat, where nothing changes, and where the world seems content to simply sit still. And oddly enough, that can feel more unsettling than danger, because in a game where something is always supposed to happen, silence starts to feel unnatural, like you've stepped outside the world for a moment and found a corner Skyrim forgot to fill with chaos. And that's what makes these places memorable. Not what's there, but what isn't.